3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to a Lord Slarr live stream where today we are going to do our panel discussion live for the first time ever. So make sure to put your insipid crap in the chat. Make it maybe less toxic than usual if possible. And I have 4 lovely guests on today to discuss this epic finale, if that is the right word. The first guest I have is Brian Hart02.
Hopefully on this live stream we will refrain from talking about sonic screwdrivers as dildos.
Oh, man, that just shows
every time you do it.
That's how little you've been on recently. That's the last live stream memory you have. Right, next guest we have is Connor, Genesis of Androzani.
Before the stream started, Brian told me he had to shit his pants aggressively.
Indeed.
Well, it wasn't as bad as what Rory said, who is our next guest.
I don't think we need to bring that up. I think it's fine. I think we can.
And finally, we have the despicable, deplorable, NMD, evil spawn of Satan himself, Tharries.
I think spawn of Satan is how I need to introduce.
Get him out.
What the? You know what's amusing to me is that, like, I hazard a bet that, like, 2 out of, like, the 5 of you, I mean, I only know, obviously, Dylan and Connor by any capacity.
Me?
But I'd hazard a guess as to say that you lot's takes are more controversial than mine, generally speaking, which is why I find it amusing.
Oh yeah, I'm known for having really shit opinions, Tharries. Like, that's sort of my whole shtick.
Aren't we all?
Right.
See, your Matt Smith takes get the normies in with you, Tharries. And whereas the normies just find an impenetrable wall between mine and Brian's opinions and, like, actually listening to us ever, so that's why.
Well, I mean, Matt Smith can penetrate anything, so
You're telling me that the reason I get stuff is because I like Matt Smith and you
Yes.
Fair enough.
It is always your fault for liking Matt Smith. That is a universal truth.
I mean,
I'm neutral on him. I don't hate him. I'm neutral. He's okay sometimes.
I've complex things about him.
I'll tell you
One thing I can say is he looks really fucking old now.
Connor has childhood trauma
I'll tell you this though.
revolving around the non-snifter.
No, Brian, that's not what I meant.
I'll tell you this though. At least they paid off the bloody Pandorica at the end of Series 5.
Oh!
They did. That's true.
Well, I mean,
Didn't pay off the rest of the bullshit, though.
I mean, they reset the universe. That's why the cracks were there. It kind of makes sense.
There's something that they forgot to mention in this episode about the Pandorica when the Doctor was talking about the Sontar and Cybermen and Daleks being together. And I was just like, hang on, but they have teamed before and you were there. It was because of you, Doctor. It was because of you.
This take occurred to me whilst I was talking to my friend Jay. It occurred to me that this
controversial JXE.
Yeah, that's the one. It occurred
5
to me.
hour long.
Yep, that's the 5 hour. It occurred to me.
Go get that in your bio, JXE. If somebody gets this clip to you, that needs to be in your bio.
Well, Jay's already put the link to the video in.
But yeah, it occurred to me that this is basically like a big budget Dimensions in Time sequel. You've got like random doctors being spliced through like random scenes that don't connect, characters all over the place. All you need is it to connect to a soap, and you've got the perfect Dimensions in Time sequel.
Right.
I'd argue it's better than Dimensions in Time.
Yeah, to be fair, I am on board with Brian there.
I haven't seen Dimensions in Time, so I can't comment. But
Oh,
I
you're
still
missing out,
think,
frankly.
I still think the Vanquishers is garbage.
Oh,
piece.
Connor,
By
I
the
can't
way-
wait.
Connor, imagine if J&T tried to write an episode of Doctor Who. That is literally what it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I haven't seen Inventions in Time, so I'm just not I'm gonna abstain from
Dylan,
that.
the stream, we're all very quiet.
Yeah, I know. I heard it, and
Listen to it, and we are very
Oh
quiet.
yeah. So
I quietly turned up the volume.
Video up.
I did. I turned all the audio up.
Okay, good.
So hopefully it should be fine now.
Hear my great takes. I need them to hear them. You know, I just need them.
See, this is why you don't come on the Lord Slarr channel. You know, the production value.
It's a shit
just not
show.
there. It's just-
I do it on purpose so I can talk over
Every
you.
time something goes wrong with the live stream.
But me and Brian had a one-on-one call. Like it was a day or two ago, and the purpose of the call was to like kind of talk a bit about this episode, but we ended up talking about a lot of other stuff too. But basically, in the middle of that, Brian kind of realized like the reason why he was enjoying a lot of Flux is because it's kind of like junk food. Where it's like it's not good for you, but it's got like a sugary quality to it.
I prefer my second analogy.
Okay, go ahead.
So essentially, it's like watching Flux is like going home to an abusive husband who enjoyed beatings.
And there goes monetization. Hey.
I was just going to compare it to Rise of Skywalker in the sense
Hey,
of it's a
YouTube
lot of stuff
advertisers.
happening fast, and if you just don't think about it, the stuff happening fast could be entertaining. I think that's sort of where it lies.
I guess it depends on what you find entertaining, because this is kind of the antithesis of what I find entertaining. Call me a senior citizen, but this just fucking gives me a headache.
You're a senior
What?
citizen. Sorry.
No, I agree.
You said
I
I
just-
had the
You know, I like it when events happen in real time. That's kind of how I like to watch TV. Clearly.
All right, so in terms of the audio, this is literally the best it's going to get. You're all on max volume, both on Discord and on OBS. So,
Turn yourself down, I guess.
well, I've already turned myself down. So this is how it's going to be. This is how it's going to be. Literally,
Well, maybe-
this is exactly the same setup as the last live stream I did. Nothing has changed. Yet, for some reason, people can play them now. So I'm just going to take that they're a bunch of little baby boys, and we're going to start the panel discussion and talk about Jodie Whittaker in this episode. Let's let, I don't know, Brian start.
Right. So Jodie Whittaker in this episode. I think Jodie Whittaker does actually pretty well with the material she's given. I was talking to Connor about this. We brought this up in our conversation. I feel like Jodie Whittaker's strengths as an actress lie in sort of lament and very serious scenes, and
Anguish.
when she's doing her anguish bits, it's a really solid performance. Like there's this one of my favorite scenes from this episode was actually the scene from between her and Azure, and it although the scene out of context is pretty solid, in context it's kind of bad, but I think she does a really nice job with the material. I think yeah, to steal a phrase from Connor, Chibnall doesn't deserve the actors he has.
Yeah. I mean, it just depends on the scene, really, because like the scene like that, like she's trying, like a scene like that, and the scene at the very end in the TARDIS, like she's trying really, really hard to make it mean something, and I don't blame her. But then also, I would say, anytime she has to like info dump stuff, like, especially the scene where she's playing time against herself, and it's just so stilted. I guess maybe because she's doing individual shots against nothing, because obviously when you're acting with yourself, you don't have like a reference to respond to.
It
So
might
that was
also
really- That was
might
really
also-
awkward.
It may also come down to, what she's been given isn't actually that good, and you
Yeah,
as
that's
the
also
viewer aren't as invested, and
Yeah,
although she's trying to give like a really
That's-
good
okay.
performance, it's
Here's
just
my
not
thing,
coming
like-
across because the writing is melodramatic.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, is it doesn't really matter that she's putting in like some real good acting in some of the scenes, because at the end of the day, you've got this just broken mess of a character. Like you've got that scene with Azure where she's trying really hard to make it like dramatic, but it's firstly you've got that scene where she's basically trying to talk about how much the Doctor cares about life, but then later on in the episode she just commits genocide and then lets two others happen and doesn't bat an eyelid, doesn't know nuance. What is this character? And then we go on Twitter and people are just like, oh well, and then we're like, what about Genesis of the Daleks? What about when the Doctor was like really anxious about genocide, and they're like, oh well, it's the Daleks. He should have killed them straight away. It's like, what's going on here?
I've been really enjoying the TARDIS posting memes about the genocide thing.
Yeah, they've been pretty good.
Oh, I haven't seen them because I don't really go on Facebook anymore.
Yeah,
I go on Facebook just for TARDIS posting.
and
That's the
again,
only
like
reason
the clash between the performance and the script is the same in the scene where she drops the chameleon thing into her TARDIS. Like, she's trying really hard to make it this huge, important moment for the character, but it's also just fucking jangling keys, because it's like, oh, hide this information until I need it, you know? It's like, oh my god, man. It's still going. Still going. We still don't know, and we still don't know the shit they've been teasing this whole time. I just don't give a shit anymore.
So, in conclusion, Jodie Whittaker, good actor. Her character, fucking garbage.
Yeah.
I thought she was fine in the episode. I quite liked the scene with her and the Grand Serpent, like the sort of torture scene. I thought she was quite good in that. But like everybody else's echo, the problem is the character arc isn't there. I mean, whatever character arc there is for the character, it's the same one we had in The Timeless Child, isn't it? It's the, oh, I don't want my past to define me, so I don't really care, moving on. And then she spends an entire 6 parts being like, oh, I really care and want to find out. And then at the end, she just decides she doesn't want to find out. And what happens in the last episode to change her mind? Like, seriously, what happens? We get a hint, I think.
There's no decisiveness, but it's not like it's not a non-decisiveness in the sense of being, you know, indecisive necessarily inherently through your character. It's more so just, it just seems like the direction of a character doesn't know where it wants to go.
I mean, I will give the Timeless Children this over, what's this one called? The Vanquishers?
Vanquishers, yeah.
She has more of a reason in the Timeless Children to be like, my past doesn't define me than whatever the fuck the ending of this episode was, because she has the Matrix projection straight up have a conversation with her about it. Like in this episode, it comes out of nowhere.
There's no cause and effect for her character. There's no cause and effect of these things happen to her and she reacts like this because of the things that have happened. Like, why does she throw the watch down the well? She throws the watch down the well because Chris Chibnall has no idea what's in the watch. That's why it goes down the well. That's the only reason.
He might know, but he just doesn't want you to find out until his very last episode. Is basically what it is. It's a marketing
With regards
tactic.
to Jodie Whittaker's performance, if I might just so what I would say is I agree with what you're all saying. She's trying her best, but I will say I found, so you know, spoilers obviously, when there's the bit where the multiple doctors interact with each other.
Yeah.
I found her variant doctors more irritating than the main one, if you will. So when she's talking to herself and it's like, you're cute. Oh, so are you? I was just, I found it so cringe. I know that some people really like that. I found it really cringe. I'll say, like, what the issue is, fundamentally, an actor, as you guys have said, an actor is only as good as their script. And unfortunately, all Jodie's really given to do, for the majority of Chibnall's run, if we're being honest, is to breathlessly explain exposition and plot details. That is what she is there to do most of the time, and Flux, and this episode is no different. You know, there's a scene, I think this perfectly summarizes it. You know, there's a scene in which she's with Kate Stewart and all the rest of them in the tunnels, and she literally just goes, "Hi, Kate Stewart. Anyway, this is what we're gonna do," and it's just like.
She hasn't seen her since like the Zygon inversion as well. Like,
it's been like 6 years, in real time, 6 years for the character, decade.
It's
like
literally that meme of like, oh no, anyway.
The way that the episode's paced like makes people look like they don't give a shit about each other is really funny.
Yep, we can come on to that because I have notes, many notes.
Yeah. Also, I just wanted to make a quick note about the sound. I've just unmuted it because I have the stream open. It is very quiet for some reason.
I've been trying very hard to fix it. Stop bullying me.
Wait, what are you using?
OBS. Look, literally, I had the exact same settings than the last stream I did, and nobody complained on that one.
I can't
This
say
is
it's
Chris
not
Chibnall's
chatting,
doing.
it
He's
is.
trying to silence us. He's trying.
Yeah,
to
this is just the softest
Wait, so
shittest
Dylan-
censorship.
Dylan, you've got your desktop audio on max, right?
Oh, wait.
Well, there we go, guys. It's
Oh,
fixed.
shite.
Guys, welcome to the Whisper Slug panel discussion. Today we're going to be whispering
Vanquisher panel discussion, but it's ASMR.
Have you fixed it, Dylan?
Yes, I've fixed it.
Oh, there we go. Okay, great.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Dylan, what are your thoughts on Jodie's performance as the Doctor?
Literally-
You haven't given yours yet.
Every other panel discussion, I've given the exact same opinion as the one I'm going to give now.
Yeah, I said the same thing a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it's just like, she's an alright actress. Well, she's a good actress. Maybe not who I would have chosen to be the Doctor, but there we go. But yeah, just no material there. Not really much material there whatsoever. I think the point that particularly hammered at home in this episode was the fact that, you know, it a lot of people were trying to say, and it did kind of look like it was going from that to, you know, where it was like kind of, my past doesn't find me, blah, 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 and we're going to see some kind of movement in that direction, but it's basically just stayed the same throughout the series, and there hasn't really been any explanation as to what this character was thinking and why they come to these conclusions.
If anyone wants to see what Jodie Whittaker's capable of as an actress, watch Antigone, watch Black Mirror, and watch Broadchurch. She's way better
That's
in
what
those
I'll say.
because she's great with adult drama because of all the the tense anguish.
Attack the Block. She's great in Attack the Block.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The problem with this character is that it's kind of the polar opposite of what her strengths are.
I'd also say that
Indeed.
to a certain degree, like, I haven't seen her in much else. I can only base it on this. But there's some times where she just feels really, like, wooden, and I can't place
it's the
what
dialogue.
it is. I
be
don't
honest,
know,
I
though,
think-
because there's some lines where I can imagine other doctors carrying it off. And as well, there's a
True.
bit in... it's not this episode specifically, but Once Upon a Time, obviously she's playing Joe Martin's scenes. And in the brief flickers you see Joe Martin, you buy the scene a lot more. Like, I just don't...
Well, I mean, in that case, she's playing a different character, which is a whole different thing.
True,
Like,
but it
she's
is
having
still the
to try and
Doctor.
play the fugitive Doctor. Yeah,
It is
I
still
get what
the
you're saying. I
Doctor,
think
and
it's
therefore-
also just part of it is that Jodie Whittaker's kind of personality that Chris wants her to put into the script is kind of not really in line with the Doctor's character. That's kind
It's
of
funny
what I
because
see it as.
I remember she was on a panel show. I think it was The Last Leg she was on recently. And I heard her, like, talking. And she's actually a very charismatic person. And, like,
Absolutely.
Yeah, she
when,
is. No, I've seen her
when
in
I
everything. She's
when I
great.
heard her swear, it was like, oh my god, Jodie can display emotions that aren't just happiness
Mate,
or like.
if you watch her in anything that's like an adult drama, like rating wise, she's so much better because she actually shows.
Like,
Well,
tension.
even in
Yeah,
the other
Connor,
adult...
you mentioned that episode of Black Mirror. Like, ooh,
Mm.
oh,
Even
Actually-
in the other
Yeah.
show written by Chris Chibnall, she's way better. So it's like...
Yeah, Broadchurch. Yeah.
But then again, Broadchurch is way better than anything Chris Chibnall has written since, so, you know.
Okay, I know what
Yeah.
I know what the problem is now, and it's not the thing I said before about how, you know, Jodie wants to just do what's in the script and Chibnall wants her to put in her own stuff to it. The problem is, and this is something that people actually said wasn't a problem, which I agreed with at the time, but now I'm not so sure, is that she hasn't seen the show before. And Chris Chibnall told her not to watch the show.
Series 11. She
Yeah.
hadn't seen it before.
Yeah.
series
Yeah,
11,
yeah. So
now she has.
she doesn't really have she didn't really get a firm grounding of the character before playing the role, which could work if the writer puts enough of that in the script. But if the writer doesn't do that, all of a sudden she doesn't really have an idea of what the character
It
actually
doesn't
is.
help.
Therefore, you know, what's
But
she
it
going to
doesn't
do?
necessarily hurt either, I don't think.
I would say-
I would argue a blank slate can be a good thing sometimes if they're given the proper direction and guidance, which
Yeah,
she
well,
wasn't.
that's what I
The
said.
thing is,
Well, I mean, like,
Yeah,
you know,
the thing is as
like,
well-
for example, like Derek Jacobi is not a fan of the show necessarily, but he played a great master. just
with
'cause of how
regards
well
to these
actor he is.
series in particular and these episodes, they are very steeped in like the established lore. And I think something that people have been saying a lot is if you're a casual audience member, what's there to care about with this? And Jodie is kind of a casual audience member. So
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is she doesn't have a reason to care about the Timeless Child or the Morbius Doctors showing up or there maybe being a lung barrow house we still don't know.
We're not
And
casual.
therefore-
We're not casual viewers, and we don't care about those things.
No, I
on the
know, but
whole.
I'm saying
So,
if she had like an in-depth understanding of those things, maybe she'd like be like, "Oh, this is this thing," and it would be.
Well, this is the thing, though, is the
she'd play
things
it
that
differently, I
Chibnall
don't
references
know.
aren't the important stuff. Like if the references he was doing was like cause and effect character journeys. Like for example, if the relationship between the Doctor and Kate Stewart was actually explored as in their history combines up to this point where she's got a new incarnation and all that. Like on top of the other stuff they've done and the Brigadier, like that would be a lot more like kind of what a showrunner should be doing, as opposed to like, "Hello, Kate Stewart. Right, let's talk about the plot." Which,
She's a good actress. She just never quite hits for me, and it's never quite believable. And it's
I just think we should avoid conjecture around her dedication to the part and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because at a certain point it becomes, well, she wasn't a real fan. She didn't care about the property.
Well, no.
Excellent two fans.
Well, the problem, I'm not saying, oh, she's the fan, now she could get the role, because as I said, it can work. You just need the right direction, the right writing for that. If you're going to say to somebody, right, give your own interpretation of the role, they need to fully understand what the role is before they do that. Especially with, something like the Doctor with this much history.
Most actors have been cast in the role get sent like clips of Patrick Troughton to watch before they play the role. That's usually what they do.
I know
I think
I
Matt
bang
Smith
on
even
about it.
admitted that.
Yeah, it's like they gave Matt Smith the Tomb of the Cybermen DVD, just like watch that.
Christian
And they base his character like around that, like a modern interpretation, and it works. Like you understand. Yeah,
there's
weird.
so much of like the core traits of the character within there, and you just sort of add your own flavor onto it. Really.
Yeah, it's so weird, and it's a shame because I really felt that during something like Series 11, it was like growing pains. Don't get me wrong, even to Series 11.
Well, also, you got to remember with
slow
Series 11,
establishment
like,
point.
They wrote those scripts without knowing who was the cast, so it's like it was just a.
But that's what I mean. That's what I mean when I say growing pains. They had time in later series.
All they to be Peter Capaldi. That's all they knew. So they just wrote for like, well, what have other doctors done? Let's just write a script.
So they never really got out of that
role.
I guess they never really got out of that. They kind of just carried on with that character. I mean, there are a couple of lines that she says that are different.
Going back to what you said, going back to what you said, Tharries, about a lot of her character being sort of just breathlessly dumping information. Like that's something that every now and then you'll see other doctors do, like, but not all the time.
Not
it's not
to the extreme that she does it.
Yeah,
though. Like
maybe like like once or twice an episode. You might see them. Have to explain some stuff to the companions, but that's
the companions are given a lot more exposition in other eras, though. Whereas in this, it's all given to the Doctor, and it's like, she's just got nothing to do other than just read the plot.
The other thing is, I also think that other writers do exposition a lot better than Chibnall as well.
Yeah, it feels very
a lot more. I've always described Russell T Davies as quite a social writer, and the way he does exposition is very much like a conversation as opposed to an instruction manual.
Which is how I think it should feel. Really, it should feel like a natural conversation between two people.
If you think about, I think the scene I usually point to is that that scene in Army of Ghosts when he talks about like describing how the void works to people that don't get it. Like that's how I
the void stuff scene is great.
Yeah.
That might also tie into the issues with Graham, Yaz, and Ryan from Series 11 and 12. Just the Doctor has most of the dialogue. The companions in Chibnall's Doctor Who are literally there to fulfill that role of just asking the questions. I know that gets talked about a lot as like you have the Doctor who explains things and the companion asks the questions, but that is actually what their function is in Chibnall's Doctor Who.
I want to say another thing. Have you noticed, like, Chibnall's obviously got like this sort of he's got this reputation now for just basically plagiarizing a lot of stuff. And in this episode, he basically just copied what they did with the 10th Doctor in the specials, where they had a character foreshadow that they're going to die and then say that the Master is involved.
Oh god, I hated that in the Tennant era. It's just like I just, why does every regeneration have to be like some kind of, ooh, it's been dramatically foretold by mysterious psychic powers? Why can't it just be right, the Doctors end up in a situation they can't get out of. Boom, dead. Next one comes along.
I mean, that's why I kind of liked 11's because it's
I guess
like
the meta.
No,
the meta of it's
Tharries!
probably-
That was one of the most, like, overdone
No,
in
but,
that
like-
way.
no, but in terms of like him himself though, he just goes, yeah, change is good. We're carrying on. That he didn't do the Tenant thing of I don't want to leave.
No, but it is made such a massive event out of, as if it's
I don't
like
know,
the 11th Doctor's doing such a he's doing
There's-
such a profound and amazingly big thing. It's like
Tharries,
bollocks.
it is foretold from his first season.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, like
Anyway,
he was the last
let's
of the
not talk
cycle.
about-
You know, I can allow that. Like,
Anyway,
Right,
He
Dylan,
He
what
changes
about
back to his younger self just
Dylan,
to have
like,
like
stay on
a.
topic. We're talking about the Flux
every
and Chibnall and
generation
the
has always
Vanquishers.
healed people.
fuck, I knew this was gonna happen.
You have your
No,
nerd rants later. What are we talking about next?
right,
Next
well,
topic.
fine, whatever. We'll do the companions. Well, actually, let's not just do the companions. Let's just do all the side characters just to make it
Yeah,
easier
okay,
in one segment.
everyone.
All 45.
Yes, all
Um,
276 of them.
Where do we
So,
start?
yeah, what do we think of Dan and Yaz and their lifeless wooden selves? Like, not the actors, but the
Yaz and-
characters.
Guys, Yaz and the Doctor nearly kissed. Did you see that?
Oh my!
My-
Yeah.
my-
Was that queer bait? Was
And then-
that queer
and then-
bait? I would
Yeah,
be tempted to call
I'd
it
go as
queer
far as to
bait.
say it was. I'd go as far as to say it was.
My
Dan
favorite
interrupted
part.
him.
My favorite part of the episode was when Yaz and Dan didn't react to the death of somebody they'd known for over 2 years.
Okay,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
I have
that's
something
right.
to say about this, okay? And it relates to like the major problem with this episode is that it's so rushed, right? It's so frenetic. The cuts are so harsh. Like when the Grand Serpent gets ditched on the space cliff, like, do you see how quickly they cut away? Like, he doesn't even have time to like look at the door that's like been busted behind him. It just cuts. But
It's
the problem I have with Chibnall, and he does this all the time, is he thinks when he's writing a script, he goes, we've got to get the characters from plot A, you know, from one step to the next. We need to move the story forward to get from here to here. But what he always does, or has a tendency to do, is he does really big things to get from that one point to another, but he never thinks about, well, what are the effects of those big things? Like in the episode,
Mhm.
he had to try and explain how the Sontarans got a hold of all those ships, right? So he just goes, oh, they killed them all. They committed genocide. Now, genocide should be a big talking point, especially when you consider that you have like a Lupari right there. And in an ideal world, what you should have done in the build-up in this story is had Carvanista and other Lupari, if the budget allowed, and, you know, raise some stakes there so that when they do get all killed off, and it shouldn't be off screen, you know, there's actually a character arc there and there's something to explore. Instead, it's like, well, I need to explain how the Sontarans took a hold of all the ships, so I killed them all off.
Rory.
Is
Another example.
Rory.
Another
no,
example
wait
of
a
this-
second. Can we just appreciate how disgusting it is how lightly the topic of genocide was treated in this
Oh yeah,
episode?
no.
Yeah.
Like, literally, one
Yeah,
minute it's
maybe
like,
it would've made
oh, your whole race are dead, and then literally, like, in the next scene, like, Jodie's doing a
You're
comedy
right, dog,
bit.
want a treat? Woof woof.
Rory.
And that-
All of these ideas you're having would have required War of the Sontarans, fucking Once Upon Time, and Village of the Angels to actually be related to the overarching
But
plot.
Jericho is the biggest crime here, okay? Because you think about, okay, so Dan, Yaz, and Jericho have been alone for 3 years, traveling the world, trying to get back. We even have an attempt at them exploring their anxieties in the last episode.
Yeah.
Great, whatever, that's good. It would have been better if it was written by somebody who could write, but whatever, that's fine. And then Jericho dies. This is someone Dan, and I think Yaz, has known longer than the Doctor at this point, technically.
True!
But these are real people, which characters are meant to be. And then he
Yeah.
dies, and we get one reaction shot from Yaz going, oh no. I don't even think we get a reaction from Dan, and it's never brought up again. That's it. And I guarantee you they don't bring it up in the future. I guarantee
Can we
you.
also address as well how, and I got a lot of stick for pointing this out. I think Dylan will probably know where I'm going with this. It is established that Carvanista has a chip in his brain that will explode if he talks anything to do with the path of the division, whatever.
Oh,
rather than-
Connor. Sorry,
rather
Tharries.
than, I was just going to say, rather than offering to help him in any way, offering condolences, anything, saying, sorry, the division did that to you, it's just never brought up again. Jodie just goes, the division put that inside you, and then that's it. Never addressed
Connor-
again. She just leaves a chip that could explode someone who was assumedly her friend's brain and everyone thinks that's fine, and I'm just like,
literally, are people really arguing that the Doctor couldn't do that or find somebody who could? Sorry, the Doctor couldn't remove it, or the Doctor couldn't find somebody.
At least.
Yeah,
At least offer or something.
Connor and I talked about this the other night too, and we both agree it's stupid. But I think a far better way of like pulling off the I can't tell you about the division thing is just to have Carvanista straight up just not want to do it.
Yes,
like it's clear.
Yeah,
it's
man.
clear that whatever the Doctor did in the past, how she left him really hurt him.
Imagine.
So he wouldn't
like
owe her
like,
anything.
more-
that would have
more the
added
Doctor.
like actual dramatic weight and character.
Like imagine
to
a
Carvanista's
situation where
stuff.
like the Doctor keeps asking him questions about it because she knows that he knows something, and he just like is like howling in terror because he knows he could die any second. Like imagine how much better that would be.
I think what the thing is though is and yeah, like you said, it's Brian's, like you said. The point is not that the bomb in the head is you could fix it. It's just stupid anyways. There's more dramatic effect in having Carvanista be like, I just don't want to talk about it. No. Like initially when he goes, it would kill me. I was like, oh, hang on, are we going to explore the notion that the Doctor
imagine
is
how
a
much
horrible shit? And instead he's like, no, bomb in the head. Sorry.
That would require some nuance, though. The way Chibnall does it is, I need there to
I
be
literally
a way
can't
that
talk about
like
it.
if you
I need
if
there to
you
be a
had
way
it
that
be
Carvanista cannot tell the Doctor, I know, I'll put a bomb in his head. It's like, no thought. They just put it in there. It's like...
Like imagine
you
how much
have
more implication there would be if it's like, if someone doesn't want to talk about it and the Doctor's like, wow, that must have been, I must have done some serious
or
shit.
just like he does it out of spite, like a nah fuck you thing. Like
yeah.
that would be so much better.
Well, the problem is, and this is a general problem with the Chibnall era, is that there's always got to be a MacGuffin for the reason why people do or don't do things. It can never be like emotional weight as characters, like how they feel as characters. It's always got to be because of a MacGuffin.
Because he just doesn't write people. He doesn't write people with like their own fucking agency and choices. They just these sticks.
The
Mr.
trouble is,
Thomas, he summarized it really well. I think it was him who said this on Twitter. I think Chibnall's the sort of person who really likes the idea of writing these big plots with all these things that happen, but isn't really that interested in the people who occupy them. And that is ultimately, like, I think one of the better, like, sort of interpretations I've seen for the way Chris Chibnall writes, just Doctor Who especially. He does not care for what the characters feel. He cares about the spectacle.
That's what makes the story seem more like a synopsis rather than a fucking journey, like it's meant to be.
Well, I come to TV for the characters, and the characters are almost non-existent in his era, and that's the reason I don't like it.
I want to see this big story from the lens of the characters.
I'd love it if there was a rewrite of this that, like, imagine, right, RTD takes over, he just rewrites Doctor Who Flux, like the same basic premise, but like written under him. I'd be interested to see just what he would do differently. Presumably, there'd be characters we actually cared about, but also,
Well, yeah, because RTD writes characters first. He writes like a big biography on pages, and then he thinks, well, from there he goes, well, what would they do? Why would they do this? Like that's kind of how he writes, and he just sort of comes up with his story based on that.
Whereas Chibnall just goes, she is a police officer. He is a plasterer who never gets mentioned.
Is he a plasterer though? Observations. I'm like, is he a plasterer? It literally never comes up.
No, it doesn't come up.
Never mention it.
I love how that's the only thing they could say on the press tour.
What?
It doesn't even come up.
Do you want to say another weird scene in this episode is where you have like Diane saying, "Oh, I don't want to go out with you anymore because you were late," despite like being kidnapped by a fucking alien.
This was another big
universe
topic.
Nearly just died. Like what?
Yeah, I saw a lot of people on Twitter trying to fill in the blanks there, and this is the trouble, right?
Well,
and
it's a scene that works better out of context than it does.
I see a lot of people go, well, I guess what happened is she was sort of overwhelmed and traumatized by the event she experienced, hence why she doesn't want to date Dan. That's fine.
Happened.
But
That
you
should
have
be in
to
the
show
story.
show us that, and I don't mean you literally have to have her go. I'm too traumatized. I can't do it. It can be done through inference, but they never do it.
That's the whole reason.
I'm convinced,
Well,
right? What I wanted to say about like the structure of the entire story is I'm pretty sure there is a lot of cut content here, just in the script and maybe even what was shot. But someone like Di, like if the cut content was in here, I imagine that scene maybe would have made more sense. But it isn't there. But the scene's still there, and it doesn't make any sense.
Well, because
I mean,
in
it's pretty-
isolation, if no one had ever watched this show before and they just saw that scene in isolation, they'd be like, "Oh yeah." So it's very clear that they've been through something to the point where they both still like each other, but she just feels like she's not ready to date him because she's been through trauma. Right? That would be a great thing in isolation. But when you actually look at the cause and effect of what we're shown about these characters, it's just like,
She seems pretty preppy most of the time. She seems like, for all the screen time I get, most of the time she's figuring stuff out, and like she seems pretty on the ball.
That's my principal issue with this, because this was another thing Connor and I were talking about on our own, is that when she's running through the passenger with Vinder, she dialogue dumps all this shit she's been through, and you don't really get the impression that it's left her traumatized, but I think that's the impression you're meant to get.
The thing is I think
it just doesn't come across, though.
Do you
It
ever
doesn't
just notice-
translate well, because she's explaining, not showing us that she has gone through all this shit. And I think it is. At the same time, people. I saw people on Twitter just simply saying something along the lines of, "Oh, that's shitty. Why doesn't she care for Dan anymore?" Well,
Diane's meant to be a human being, not a fucking fax machine.
Well, it's also like, in her dialogue, you can kind of tell that she's in that scene. If that's like Connor said, that scene on its own is like really fucking cool. If you just watched that scene, you would probably be like, "Oh wow."
Yeah, you could make assumptions about how we got there.
Like, imagine
she even and there's evidence to like show that she does still care about Dan. She goes up and hugs him when she's reunited with him, and she also says, "Maybe not tomorrow," as if open to the idea of doing it in the future.
The thing is, though, even if that stuff was included, I'm not even sure I give a shit, because they're not real characters. We've had so little time. Di and Dan have shared one scene together before this episode, so there are no scenes of the romance at all. There's none.
Do you ever just notice, though, how every character in the Chibnall era who isn't a central antagonist is all just really nice and loves life until something has to happen to them? And then they're like, "Oh, by the way, this thing happened to me. It's really sad." Anyway, that was what I was going for. I'm glad someone picked up on it.
Yeah.
They all love their lives until
it's
a
really
character
hard
thing.
to create. It's really hard to create believable tension with drama when you've just got nice people. And
Well, I'll tell you what it reminds me of. Tharries. Birdemic. Because at the start of Birdemic, everything's always going great in their lives. And I honestly don't know where this is going, but they're all very happy and everything goes great. And then the birds come, and all of a sudden things are a bit more somber, and then, bird acid and things like that. Okay, this is a really bad comparison.
I'll give you an example, right? I'll give you an example of what I think it's like. It's like the Truman Show. It's like how they're all very fakely happy, but you sort of peel beneath the surface and there's some messed up shit going on.
My point is, though, it's a rare scene where you actually do have some nuance, but it still doesn't work because it's technically an effect and you don't see the cause.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
Do we remember in the first episode where there's a conversation between Dan and some random lady, and it's like, "Oh, Dan, you're too sort of nice for your own good." And I'm like, "Oh, that's an interesting concept. Are they going to explore that? Is Dan going to, get in a situation where, because of his selflessness, he ends up sort of screwing people over and needs to learn that sometimes, just sometimes, you have to, rein it in and think a bit more consciously about yourself?" Nope. Dan has no arc, does he? He's just there. I mean, again, John Bishop cracks good lines, and he's fun to watch at times, but he's just there. And I think, sort of, overall, you were talking earlier about the MacGuffin. The problem is Chibnall writes where the MacGuffin is the reason we should be interested, opposed to the reason that the sort of characters, ideas, and themes are explored. So that's when we become interested. It's like, nobody watches Pulp Fiction because they're interested in what's in the briefcase. They're interested in the characters around the briefcase. Nobody should watch the Flux because they're interested in the Flux.
The heist isn't the plot; it's the people that are involved in it.
Yeah,
but that's
the Flux should be used as an exploration, and it isn't. There is no there's no core, there's no characters or ideas or themes here that are being explored. It's just empty.
But that's the only reason people are ever invested in Chibnall's things, though, is that, oh, this mystery thing might do something later. Do you ever notice how, like, the majority of people who are excited, like, throughout Flux, has been stuff to do with theorizing about the Division and the Timeless Child and stuff? Because I think what I've come to realize is that the promise of what the Timeless Child and or the Division and or whatever else could bring is more interesting than what's actually being presented.
Well, this is
and that's why people
Brian,
latch onto it.
something that me and Brian have talked about before is the Chibnall era. A lot of it's based on telling us about things off screen that sound interesting. Like the whole Joe Martin side of this story, we never get to really see. We just get hints of it, and there's other things too that we just don't see.
I'm sorry, but I have to bring this up. If Chibnall did a series about like Joe Martin chasing Swarm through space and time as he fucks shit up, I would so watch that. That sounds so good.
I would watch it if the actual character that Joe Martin portrays, has an arc in the story when she's chasing Swarm. Does she perhaps realize, is this the beginning where the Doctor realizes that they're being too severe and too harsh? Do you start by having Joe Martin play basically a mercenary who then becomes more like the Doctor or whatever? And yes, I know other people like Dylan maybe would take issue with this because the whole point of the first Doctor is you see that arc of him sort of softening and becoming more kind and more open and whatever. But since Chris Chibnall has decided to ignore that anyways, like, fuck it, why not? Like, at least that would be interesting. At this point, we're just watching jangling keys with vessels of supposed characters walking around.
I mean, can I just ask? Can I just ask you all what questions that Flux has brought up have actually been answered?
None. Because we knew what the Division was at the end of last season. We could infer what it was.
In terms of Flux specifically, are you talking Flux specifically? Or are you talking
Flux.
The wider arc?
No, Flux.
So Flux specifically.
Ben is pretty pointless. So
I mean, the questions that have been answered surrounding like the actual Flux plot line is, I guess, what Tunnel Man was doing. Give me a sec. There are a couple others.
We don't know what's happened to the universe.
Who made the Flux? I guess we know that the Division made the Flux.
Tecteun, excuse you. Her name is Tecteun.
There's like chunks of the universe that have been destroyed, and we have no idea if it's been repaired or not.
That is one of the worst bits.
That annoyed me. We have like no implication as to what the state of the universe is.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
People on Twitter saying that was a nitpick, but like that's not a nitpick. Knowing the state of the universe after an event is not a nitpick. That's just a basic thing that I feel like you should know after a story that happens.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the implication of the whole Sontarans luring the other creatures there because it was the only place left in the universe? Isn't the implication of that Earth, or at least our solar system, is the only place in the universe that survived the Flux?
We don't know, but let's be honest, they're going to ignore it anyways. Because Chris Chibnall, I am convinced, right, that Chris Chibnall thinks that this episode undid it. I think there is a cut somewhere of this script that does throw in the line about how, we're on Atropos and we've reversed it so the rest of the universe is fine and we can't wait for the destruction to happen or whatever. The trouble is that line's not there, and as far as what we saw, the universe is destroyed still. Like, they didn't actually reverse that.
It makes
still mostly, and I think the solar system should be mostly gone as well because the Flux is just getting onto Earth. So
if shit just goes back to normal, like next time, and all the universe is fine, it just makes the Flux look like a cosmetic change rather than an actual change.
Hang on, I just thought of something. This might completely, this might actually shatter the realization. So, when the Lupari ships covered the Earth, I guess the implication was that they could still get sunlight somehow.
Don't think about it.
But here's my additional point. Once the Lupari ships are gone, the sun's a lot farther away from the Earth, which is established as the center point of where the Flux culminates. So surely now that the Lupari ships are gone, Earth should just not have a sun anymore.
Don't think about it. It's fine.
Why is none of this addressed? This is such important stuff. And now is literally every single other species apart from humans in the Doctor universe wiped out. Why is this not being addressed?
Well, can we talk? I think what we need, can we all agree vaguely that the likelihood was this was meant to be like an 8 or 10 parter? Like there was meant to be.
But there was so much content he could have easily cut, though.
But let me. let me finish my point. My point is that, right, when we're talking about characters, okay, realistically, I can think of so many characters who could have been cut from this script, and with minor adjustments, you can still get to where we were. You don't need the Grand Serpent. You don't need Unit. You don't need Kate. You don't need Belle. You don't need Vinda. I understand why Belle was there. She's meant to be the emotional crux of the effect of the Flux or whatever, but it doesn't work, so we don't need her. We don't even really need Joseph Williamson, really, right? So you've cut out probably an hour plus worth of content at that point, and if you had done that, maybe we could have adequately explored what did actually happen, which was nonsense.
Okay, I've just saw a funny comment. Can I just read this funny comment quickly? Division was revealed to be the Doctor's stepmom, an ood, and a tree.
Yep. Yep. I mean, part of that probably is budget.
An LED tree.
Probably. But, like, still. What I was going to say, what was the last point that was just made? Because it was tied into that, and I can't remember what I was going to say.
Oh, sorry, thanks.
It had a linking, connecting thing. Just before you made the joke, what was the thing that was...
Oh, we were basically talking about how there's so much... Like where was the sun? And also, we could have cut so much.
Here's what I think happened. And I was listening to Review of Death, so I can't get the credit for myself. But they made a good point. They said, it felt like Chibnall had 8 to 10 hours of content, which you guys said. But and he knew he had to cut some stuff out for the runtime of 6 hours, but he went, oh no, but I really want that bit in. Oh no, but I really want Joseph Williamson. I really want to do that historical bit. Oh, but I really want Belle and Vinder. I really want that emotional Romeo and Juliet, star-crossed lovers thing. Yeah. Oh no, but I really want Unit to be in it. We need Kate Stewart back in. We've got Gemma Redgrave. You know, and he just didn't cut out anything.
They paid for those actors, I guess.
I think the payoff from the Vanquishers retroactively ruins War of the Sontarans, Once Upon a Time, and Village of the Angels. Even though
I don't know if I'd go that. I mean, I think it ruins episodes 1, 3, and 1, 3, and 5. I think it ruins.
2 through 4 are essentially allocated to filler. Like, we could have spent so much time. We could have had 3 hours actually focusing on the plot, the real meat of Flux, developing these characters, having Dai be, traumatized, developing the Lupari, all these things.
I think you should have kept with Dai, Dan, Carvanista, and
Azure
and Swarm.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
What was even the point of... I'm sorry, but what was even the point of Swarm and Azure? What were they trying to do? And they go down,
what happened was...
That?
What happened is Tecteun wanted them to, destroy time or the structure of time or whatever, along with space, to kill the universe or whatever. So she was like, I'm going to release them. And then they showed up and killed her.
We don't actually know why they want to do that or what that entails.
They want to do it because they want to do it.
Time to develop them.
I have a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory.
What's your conspiracy theory?
Azure explains that life is bad or something.
Oh my god, we can get onto that.
Right, my conspiracy theory is that originally Swarm and Azure were the main villains who caused the Flux in this story, because that's really what it feels like from the beginning of the episode. But then, probably a long way into writing, you thought, the Division stuff seems really weakly tied to this story. What if I just say the Division did Flux?
Yeah,
possibly.
You could be right. Also, as well, I'll say in regards to that, when was it established that time was a physical force? Because they talk about time as though it is a force.
Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Fine.
But I'm thinking about it.
But you should just enjoy the jangly keys. Just watch the keys jangle.
Just no thought. Only consume. Only consume. No think. Only watch.
It's just a pacing nightmare. We have 3 hours which we could have used to actually develop these ideas, and instead, we got an okay Sontaran story.
And I want to talk briefly.
It was okay, wasn't it? It was alright. I'll give it that.
It was okay.
We're kind of talking about side characters and things. Can I count the chocolate Sontaran as a side character?
You can, and actually,
I want to make a point.
Worse than Strax. I fucking said it.
I want to make a point very quickly. I want to make a point. So, on its own, and I might be alone in this, fair enough, I don't mind the idea of a Sontaran that loves chocolate. Hear me out. what I take issue with, and I tweeted this. I'm gonna see if I can get the exact thing I tweeted, because once you think about this chocolate scene for more than a second,
It makes no sense.
Entirely collapses.
Yeah.
Much like the rest of Doctor Who. So
You can only get chocolate in
this
corner shop.
exactly. I said this exactly. I actually didn't mind the chocolate scene in concept. I'm also take issue with how contrived it is that they just so happened to find one Sontaran commander that was addicted to chocolate that they could bribe with said chocolate, despite him already having said chocolate because he's in a corner shop, in order to get into Sontaran command.
No,
It-
no,
Buy a
you
corner
don't, you
shop
don't
as
get
well.
it.
You can
See,
get much more
they
chocolate
bribe
in
him
supermarkets.
with unlimited chocolate.
But he already has access to unlimited
But
chocolate. They've
The
conquered the world.
Sontarans are already occupying Earth, and they have
Honestly,
the human
that
race
scene made me
basically
think of, like,
enslaved. Like,
that
just
some- that
get
scene
them
made
to
me
make
think of,
more
like,
chocolate.
some kind of-
Well, they've been
some kind of
executing.
cringe
They've been
meme.
executing the humans, right? They don't have a recipe for
No, but
chocolate.
Saved
Only
on a
humans
computer
know
in
how to
Cadbury's
produce
factory.
chocolate.
He has
Surely
the
there are
recipe.
some humans around still, right?
Also,
like, or
also
did they
you
all
wanna
just
you wanna
die?
talk about tonal whiplash as well. Like, this is like a series finale where the fucking universe is at stake and they've taken over the Earth, and that's what he's gonna do. He's like, chocolate.
Well, can I make a point about, because this is a good point, right? The Sontarans have taken over the Earth, and I don't want to nosh off Russell T Davies too much. I do like Russell, but I'm just going to keep it reasonable.
He deserves
Can you
it.
remember how good, and say what you want about the Stolen Earth and Journey's End, because it can be, a bit much, but in the Stolen Earth, can you remember how sort of real the invasion of Earth feels
Yeah.
from the Daleks? How you can see
one of the main
effect it
reasons
has on
why.
them.
One of the main reasons why is when the first time they hear their voice, you see the reactions of all the
Yeah,
characters that
the thing is-
are not only just characters that are involved in the story, but characters that are developed.
And
This
know what
happened. This
Daleks
happened
are.
in both Sontaran episodes. The invasions feel so empty. They feel so lifeless because there's no government. There's barely any civilian reactions. The Sontarans are basically they're just special effects. They're just ships on iconic buildings and stuff, and you get some composite shots of them all. Like the same three guys being like duplicated over and over, walking along a shopping center or something. But there's no depth to it. It's just the Sontarans have invaded. Okay, apparently invading Earth is just like whatever. It's another week.
this is.
innit?
I'm thinking about it,
my
literally,
question,
we-
This is my question. This is a question I have. What's the point of the Grand Serpent? Because it's established in the previous episode, right? That the whole point of him infiltrating a unit is to lower Earth's defenses to get into the planet, right? So the Sontarans can invade. But we've already seen the Sontarans invade once before, and they've got their
point is
entire
the Grand
like
Serpent.
force. So just ram it through the Lupari ships. You probably collapse them if you tried hard enough. You've got like 6 billion ships. Why does Grand Serpent need to be in this story, and why does
The
you
reason
need
why
to
the
be
Grand
there?
Serpent is there is because it explains why John Pertwee has a snake tattoo. That's why.
Shut the fuck up.
Are you laughing into a can of Pringles?
What? No, I'm just drinking water out of a
Like,
bottle.
what is the point of Unit, the Grand Serpent? Why? Why is it there?
No, because it's a
can someone
reference,
give-
Tharry. It's a reference.
But it's not even a good reference.
It's terrible.
I'm as baffled as you are, Tharries. Honestly, like they even hint to something like more, there being something more to him, and like I don't know. I don't really care. I'm not
It's
really
well
shame,
performed,
you know,
but like
It's a
again,
shame
why
'cause
am I meant
like,
to care?
like a lot of other people in this series, like the guy who plays the Grand Serpent's a really good actor,
Yeah,
but it's just his character is just fucking nothing.
Maddox
I-
said sound like I didn't
think-
miss much skipping this
I think
season. No, you
Davis, the Doctor Who guy named
Yes,
Davis
I know
on the
Davis.
internet. I
Randall
love
Davis.
him, but anyway, he said something in his Survivors of the Flux review that I feel
I think
more
I know
about
what you're gonna say.
more about this episode. It's that well-made television has never been less fun to watch.
And
I wouldn't call it
I agree.
well-made television, to be honest. I know that's probably a hot take, but that's just kind of how I feel.
Well, the
about
show
it.
looks great. You have a lot of talent on it, but like
I mean,
the writing's
to be
just
fair-
fucking bad.
To be fair, I might be a bit biased because I'm an editor. Like, I studied editing, and for me, the pacing of this episode is like so below standard that I would not want to broadcast it.
Anyone notice the Star Wars transitions?
What the fuck
Like,
was
wow.
up with the
my
fade
God.
wipes? Since when were we doing fade wipes? When did that
Because
happen?
because Chibnall
Yeah.
Chibnall got coked up and watched A New Hope and went, "That's what I'm doing this weekend."
But it was literally, it was just one scene though. I can only remember one phase
No,
wipe.
there were a few.
Was there? I only noticed one.
No,
Maybe I was the one who was coked up.
The editing was atrocious though. There were so
The fucking writing was coked up.
Do you remember? Do you remember?
Tell you that much.
Do you know in the Swarm when Azure is talking to the Doctor and it's that stupid morality bit of we hate life and you like life and it's just a different perspective that we're right. That is dumb morality and it's as bad as last week's. But you have morality.
I hate the way the last 2 episodes have dealt with morality. But it does my head in.
The editing point is Azure's talking to the Doctor, right, and Swarm's in the back, like just doing whatever, and it cuts to the Doctor, and then it cuts back to Azure, and suddenly Swarm's like right next to her, and it's just so it's like, wait, when did he get there? When did this happen? I thought he was actually inside the room.
Someone pointed this out. I think it was Doctor Who Poop, funnily enough, who pointed this out. There is a continuity error at the end of this episode, where there's a bit at the end of the episode where they're all stood in the TARDIS, and Dan's going to find his room in the TARDIS or whatever, and in the next shot, because the last we see of him, he's like halfway up the stairs, and in the next shot where we see Yaz, he's disappeared.
I literally think they tried to cut as many seconds as humanly possible out of this episode. Like any movements they could have cut out.
And this episode was an hour long as well. It was an especially long one.
He had 6 hours in total to tell a story and wrap it up, and by the end we're still like, oh, we've got to hurry up.
That's because he filled 3 of those hours with filler.
Is it really surprising
2, 3,
though?
and 4 are filler.
Is it really surprising given how much
form.
his other episodes suffered from 45-minute syndrome? Even though it was 50 minutes, and he just didn't seem to care. So it was like, right, so now I've got 6 hours. He just packed a billion ideas into this.
The frustration, though, is that this would have been a great opportunity, having a 6-hour story where you could just spend the time telling one story. It would have been a golden opportunity to do some well-needed character development, some well-needed dynamic, in terms of the character dynamics, establishing what they actually are.
The closest thing we get in Doctor Who to a 6-hour story that isn't Flux is the Daleks' master plan, and look at how much character is in that story.
But exactly.
Look at how much they develop, the Doctor and Stephen, Katarina, Brett Vine, Sarah Kingdom, Marvick Chen, the Daleks, all of the Council.
These could have been a godsend for characters.
Even the stupid side characters like all the historical stuff and the Medley Monk and all that still get more character than some of these people.
This could have been a godsend for the characters, and what they instead decided to do was throw 15 things at once.
And then by part 12, by the 6th hour of the story, it feels like you've got this complete package in this journey, and it's an absolute, epic ending. Whereas what happened here was a fucking anti-climax of all.
Well, you see what Dalek's master plan and a lot of other of the really good longer classic episodes understood is that even though you've got a long time, that doesn't mean there's room for a billion different plots. Just have a good plot idea, execute it as well as possible, and if you've got extra time to fill it with characters, not with more returning plot points or shit like that.
The issue with this story, I think, just overall, is it's too crammed and there's so much that Chibnall wants to do, but he doesn't have the time to do it all. So by the end of it, we just end up back where we were in Timeless Children, essentially. Maddox, I'm sorry, Maddox in the chat here says, sounds like I didn't miss much by sitting this season out then. Lol. You really didn't. No, nothing has changed. We're still where we are a season ago.
Honestly, can I just ask, what do we know about the Division this series that we didn't know last series? We don't.
I mean, they captured Swarm and Azure, but that's it. We already knew what they were through Inference last season.
They also have the ability to transcend multiverses. I don't think that was established in
But the Time Lords already have that ability.
Transcending multiverses was a thing before this.
Yeah.
Before this.
They did it in 2006.
Literally, I did Ferdo.
Fucking 1970.
I'd literally, David Tennant's Doctor, the 10th Doctor, actually says in Rise of the Cybermen that it was easy to do when the Time Lords were in charge. It was just something they could do if they wanted to.
Oh, you're right. So they haven't actually done anything. I mean, we learn, I guess, that they recruit people who aren't just Time Lords, because Carmenista's part of it.
And the Angels.
And the Angels.
But why does it need to be its own thing?
The only thing we learn.
This could have been like the CIA. Like the CIA already pretty much does this.
Like someone on I don't know where it was. I think I've seen a few people suggest this. You know how like antimatter is a massive part of this plot? How much sense would it made if Omega was the central antagonist of this series?
Yeah, maybe.
Like, it would have made like a lot of sense if you think about it, because like if the Flux is made out of antimatter, antimatter is Omega's whole deal. Like that's his whole thing.
Especially because in the Timeless Children, it's assumed that Omega is one of the three
And I'm
characters.
sorry, but like a reveal that Omega is actually the story would be a lot more like, exciting than Tech Tayun, a character that at this point we'd seen for 5 minutes beforehand.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Tharries, especially because like the fans, at least for a decade now, have been begging for Omega back. Like, if you're gonna do a story with antimatter destroying the universe,
needless fan wank.
And needless
Antimatter
fan wank.
and Time Lord history. It's like the perfect thing.
Why not just have Omega in there? Like, what's
did you notice
the point?
Also, Chibnall did the Lungbearer bait, and it wasn't actually Lungbearer.
And also time as well. Like it was always established that Omega had mastery over time, so it's literally the perfect plot to slide
Like
into.
you could almost replace Swarm with Omega and Tech Tayun with Omega. And it would have been a much
Pretty
better
much.
story.
This is a lot like the Timeless Children, though, where the plot becomes a lot more interesting and makes a lot more sense if the Timeless Child is the Master and not the Doctor. Like, suddenly, yeah, it still has its issues, but there's like one easy switch like that you could have pulled, and suddenly the plot makes
I
more
do have
sense.
issues with that too. One of my biggest issues with that is the fact that the Master actually does kind of... I guess you'd have to explain after being the Timeless Child, the Master was given back regular regeneration cycle, because we do see the Master almost die in Classic Who multiple times.
I suppose,
Like,
but I just meant from a
when it
character
becomes-
perspective, like it fits him more than it fits the Doctor.
I get what you're saying, but you would have to explain that because it's established that the Master can die. If you know what I mean.
Like he's in his last regeneration for a
and to be fair,
majority of the classic show.
It was on the edge with the Doctor too, given what we saw in Matt Smith's last story. That was hinting at him dying too. So, yeah,
It's hinting
really
at Jodie dying now. Oh, she won't regenerate this time. It's like, well, she will. She will regenerate.
Yeah, well, there's
We all know
no reason not to believe that. Like, that's just
They're
weird.
going to announce who they casted as the next Doctor before Jodie.
The only reason they're doing that is because Chris Chibnall doesn't have a creative bone in his body, and he just copied the same thing they did with Tennant and Planet of the Dead, where they said that you are going to die and the Master's going to be there.
And if you're going to copy anything,
even-
don't copy
even-
that shit.
Yeah, I mean even the multiple Doctors thing is just a shit copy of the Meta Crisis.
Oh yeah, that's
It's just a shit version of Kedroya.
Yeah,
Actually,
so, like,
yeah.
I'm saying it makes more
It
sense it being the Meta Crisis though, because like
and the
in that
reason why
scenario, like,
Pedroia was really good was because when they split McGann into three, it was three different sides of his
Yeah.
personality, and they
I noticed a lot. Sorry, Big Finish McGann weeb here. I noticed a lot in this series that felt a little bit derivative of like early McGann Big Finish stuff.
Wouldn't surprise me. It's like conceptually the same kind of idea, but execution-wise
Like
is on the opposite.
this story feels like a very, very piss poor version of Zagreus.
people have pointed
Yeah.
out that this is unrelated like to this episode, but like
Yeah,
in
Zagreus
regards to what
was
you're
1
saying,
hour.
like people have pointed out just the amount of similar scenes there are in Revolution of the Daleks to Blood of the Daleks, I think it is. Like there's
Yeah.
literally one scene that's like almost.
Well, I
like,
mean, you look
beat-
at the
beat for
entire
beat,
series,
word for word.
and they just gutted like the whole of Series 3 and just plastered it on.
Yeah,
onto
it's
Series
just.
12.
Well, I mean, if we...
I,
Do you remember, Dylan, when we did the War of the Sontarans thing? And I said that the characters, the companions, work best when they're separated from the Doctor. When you give them their own side plots and stuff to do, suddenly the characters feel more interesting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't always work, but it does work. Well, did you notice that the reason... Well, I would posit the reason that the side characters are so like boring in this episode is because they literally have Jodie in every scene
What? But
doing shit.
in Survivors of
take
Flux,
their-
they were really bad in Survivors of Flux, and they were pretty much all separated
Yeah.
from the Doctor.
Also,
Yeah,
you notice
I blame
like,
Chibnall.
because they have multiple versions of it. Like in other stories where we get multiple Doctors, they usually spend time showing us the difference between them, so we get a bit of dimension in the interaction. But in this, it's just like three chatterboxes, and that's all you really get.
Because he's got plot lines to resolve, so he needs to put the
There's not really
That's
much
it. That's the
difference
only reason.
between them. It's just a bunch of the same person, and like the two that aren't the main one are just sort of a caricature of what we've already got.
Also, did you not find the editing with the multiple Doctors really odd. Like, they never really try and do proper composite shots or anything, so the conversations are, like, really weird. Like, they keep cutting from one to the other, and it's kind of hard to tell who's talking, especially in the TARDIS. And I guess they're the same person, so it doesn't matter, but, like, then why have a conversation with herself? Shouldn't she just know what she's going to do, since they're all the same person? I don't know.
Here's the thing, it's like they tried to do these big budget, like, concepts, but didn't account for the fact that, like, COVID was gonna make these things a lot more difficult. So they just tried to do them anyway, and it's like, it just doesn't look right. Like, and I felt that, like, throughout the series, like, there's just bits where it just doesn't feel right. Like, did you notice that with the Daleks, in this episode, it's, like, archive footage from Revolution, or, like, unused, drone shots, or whatever it was, from, like, Revolution. And, like, if you actually look really closely in the scene where the Daleks are, talking to the Sontarans, the lights on the domes have been added in like After Effects, so you can see like the lights weren't originally like that, and it's been added on.
The effects team on this series had a lot to do, didn't they? They really did,
but like this is what I mean. I think Chibnall needed to take account for that and be like, okay, we can't do the thing I wanted to do. COVID's just not going to allow for that. Let me actually make something that
especially in an episode like Once Upon a Time, which has green screen in almost every shot.
Yeah, and it just doesn't look quite right. And this is what I mean, like...
I've got to ask Dylan.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you won.
Do you think the fact that this panel discussion, because it is a little messy, I know your panel discussions are usually a bit more structured than this. Do you think this one's so messy because it reflects the messiness of this fucking episode?
Originally I was planning to control it like normal panel discussions, but then I just realised, wait a second, this is just like so much of a clusterfuck you can't really organise talking about. You've just got to kind of move on from one thing to the next. Like, we haven't even talked about all sorts of...
this has about as much structure as the episode.
We haven't talked about all sorts of the other things that don't make sense. Like, how does Kate Stewart know to find them in the tunnels? She just appears there.
Yeah.
How did you get the
Where's
TARDIS
the human
there?
resistance? Where's the human resistance?
How did she get the TARDIS there? There's only one person there.
Yeah, we
How
never
did she
see the
carry
human
TARDIS?
resistance. We never see the human resistance ever again.
I have a little fan theory in my
one guy.
head that it's... Yeah, no, I have a fan theory in my head that she's the only one in it, and she's just given herself the title.
And yes, but hang on, here's another problem,
That'll
right?
distinguish me from my dad.
She's the human resistance. She's the
what's funny?
Sontaran human... Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's a funny thing. You know how we're talking about like how Chibnall sort of just trying to focus on one or two things and sort of develop them. I've just seen a tweet from bloody Pink Shirt who has the same take as us, except he said that he wished that he focused on the comedy Sontarans as one story, like the chocolate.
They should have just called it the chocolate apocalypse.
Chocolate!
I find that more enjoyable, though. I'm gonna be honest. Like,
Well, right.
I mean,
so Kate Stewart.
Tharries, just a question: do you like Strax?
Oh, Tharries, you're about to get bullied.
Hang on.
You're about to get bullied, Frax.
I know you like
the 11th Doctor era. So.
I haven't answered. I don't mind. No, let me finish. I don't mind the concept of Strax. What I take
You will be put to death.
No, let me finish. The issue I take with Strax is how he negatively impacted the rest of the Sontaran race to essentially just make them all jokesters and things. I don't mind the idea of a Sontaran that's domesticated.
Why are you okay with this rather than Strax?
What, the chocolate scene?
Yeah, why are you okay with this?
If I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I found it funny, and I will take enjoyment.
To death!
Same.
What?
I found it funny as well.
No, what?
I found it funny, and like, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'll take whatever
Normies.
enjoyment I can get. I did as well. Well, you know what?
I mean, like,
you know what?
I'm
Well,
sorry.
maybe you'll just.
I mean, like, I think
who has no fun anymore.
Maybe you just don't understand the draw of chocolate.
Maybe you
Slarr.
just don't have a high IQ.
Well, I am
to
vegan,
understand
so.
why Sontarans- Yeah, maybe you just don't have a high enough IQ to understand why the Sontarans love
Oh my
chocolate.
God.
Actually.
Oh, there have unironically been people on Twitter who have been like, "Oh my god, you just don't understand Flux." The best one was when somebody who literally tweeted, "My god, guys, stop telling me why I shouldn't like Flux. Stop telling people why they shouldn't enjoy. But you're all wrong to not enjoy it. You just don't understand it."
It's funny how we've devolved from like what used to be the sort of a lot of the Capaldi era stands that are like, oh, you don't understand this like Moffat Shakespearean drama that should be hung in the Louvre. Like it's kind of like, okay,
It's a meditation on grief. You don't understand.
And given how pretentious a lot of it is, it's kind of like I can see why they've gotten to that point because they've been sucked in by the way it presents itself. Whereas there's something like the chocolate scene, it's like they're trying to make that seem like it's intellectual. Like it just makes me laugh.
Right, okay.
No, the chocolate scene is the highest IQ
Kate
thing
Stewart,
ever
okay.
television.
Kate Stewart is the leader of the human resistance, right? Yeah?
Mhm.
Okay,
Allegedly.
but like, when did the Sontarans get to Earth? Like, how long have they been there? Has it been like an hour? A couple days?
Where is
Couple
this
weeks?
human
Like-
resistance? I haven't seen any of them.
No, but what I mean is,
Where's
is
Osgood?
in
I've
the-
got this question as
she
well.
was on the phone.
Where is she?
She was on the
Because
phone.
Where's Martha?
She calls her. Like, what?
No, but what I'm trying to say is right is in the end of the last episode we have the stakes being the Sontarans are back and they're invading Earth or whatever. As it turns out, it's for a secondary reason. They just want coordinates or whatever. But they're invading Earth, and then in this episode, they're on Earth, and there's a resistance.
You know what?
But there's been no time. No time has passed. So like,
You know
how long
what?
has it been?
You
Like
know what?
5 minutes.
Honestly, you know what wouldn't surprise me? It honestly wouldn't surprise me if Kate Stewart wasn't actually meant to be in this
no,
series.
you don't say.
No,
I think genuinely, I think it was meant to be Captain Jack, and it was meant to be a
No,
talk.
Oh, spicy.
It might
But
have
I
been...
think they probably,
I
when
thought-
Jack had the whole thing, they probably replaced him with Kate Stewart.
It might well be that, but it also might just be the fact that... Do you remember how in Fugitive of the Jadoon, Jack doesn't really do anything? He's just there.
He's trailer bait. He was
And
trailer bait.
Resolution too.
Yeah, but that's what I think Kate Stewart was.
Yeah.
It's
She's
just-
trailer bait.
It's
That's
just,
all
it's
there is
just,
to that.
it's just her being in an episode tangentially to set up, because they even have that cringy, obvious line at the end where she's like, "Oh, I hope I meet this regeneration again." Like that's not a tease to a most obvious tease to the.
I mean, it wouldn't
Centenary
surprise
special
me
I've
if,
ever seen.
like, in Jodie's final episode, Chibnall just has everything from his whole era.
Oh, you-
Okay, great question. Great question here from Maddox Productions. The ultimate question of pain between Moffat Chibnall and Peter Harness. Who writes Kate Stewart the worst?
I don't think you can accuse him of writing her the worst.
I mean,
because he doesn't
it's a
write
different-
her. He doesn't write her. She's
thing,
just
right?
there.
Because well, the thing is, in the Moffat era, like as bland as Kate Stewart is, a lot of the time she actually is a character and has an effect on the
Is
story.
she though?
whereas
Is she a character in the Moffat era? What's her character?
No, hang on, no, let me finish. I'm not speaking in terms of like traits and personality. I mean, as in she's meant to be an important factor in the story. She's
Yeah,
in
she's
like
a participant.
So, if anything, doesn't that make the fact she has no character worse in the Moffat era?
No, because
Possibly.
at least she's there. At least she's there. Like,
But
you
it's
know.
what I mean. What I mean to
Win.
say is it's kind of an apples and oranges situation where she's barely fucking in this series. I guess I would say she's probably really badly written in Survivors because
Wait a minute.
because
Wait a
how
minute.
dumb she is. But
Didn't Chibnall write Power of Three? Just the
yeah,
first.
she did. He
True!
introduced this
That's why she's such a boring character. We've solved it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I actually saw a great interaction on Twitter where someone was like defending this episode, and we're like, well, the Doctor's always been casual about death. Take for example, dinosaurs on a spaceship, and somebody went, well, who wrote dinosaurs on a spaceship?
Yeah,
please,
Christian Hill.
could you please
Yeah.
remind us?
He kills Solomon in cold blood and doesn't bat an eye.
I actually low-key kind of loved that though when I first.
It
saw
was
so.
it's so strange though when he does that. Like, I don't
Especially
know.
because,
Like,
like,
what has
in-
Solomon done so much
in
worse than so many of
in
the
the,
other villains he's refused to kill?
In the same episode, you've got this is the same episode where the 11th Doctor has been real like excited about dinosaurs, and he's being real like a big kid, and then at the end of the episode he murders Solomon, and yeah, that happens.
Can I just say as well, I'm
Like
so
Christian-
sick of I'm so sick of the argument that thing happened in the past, therefore you can't dislike it now. And the
fucking hate
reason
that.
I'm sick of it is there are some cases where I disliked it there as well. Exhibit A, I don't remember
There's
who
an
made the
assumption
tweet.
made that, that you like
I think I do
everything that
remember who made the tweet.
Well, that's the problem is that a lot of people who go really hard on people who don't like Chris Chibnall just assume that their only motivation for criticizing Chibnall era episodes is that they just hate Chibnall and maybe even hate the fact that there's a woman doctor. There's no possible way we just think that the writing's bad. There's always got to be an ulterior motive.
I remember, right? Someone tweeting out.
Worse than that is assuming that we love everything that came before it, which is not true.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not true. Yeah, I remember someone.
Imagine saying that to me.
After Once Upon Time. Yeah, no, I remember someone tweeting out when Once Upon Time came out, right? That, if this was written by Moffat, you'd all love it. And I was like, excuse me? Do you remember the amount of shit Moffat got? Like, are we just glossing over that?
Are we forgetting Hellbent?
Got death threats.
Are we forgetting Hellbent?
Actually, I would actually still say I enjoy Chibnall's Doctor Who just a tiny bit better than Moffat.
Get out.
Like,
but Moffat did occasionally have a good episode. Like,
Because
leave. As an 11th
Demons of the
Doctor,
Punjab is good. Fuck you.
It's not that
not
good,
even
I'm
written by
sorry.
Chibnall. It's not even that good.
Dylan, can I make a statement here? And I've been ruminating on this for a few days now. At the conclusion of Flux, I am genuinely of the opinion, and this is, I can, like I said, I've got thousands of words I can go through step by step.
Go ahead.
I think Chris Chibnall.
Right. Before you start, Rory, everybody give him a wide berth. He's wrote a document for this, so
no, I'm not reading
have a
it all
rant.
out because it's just a bit scattered.
Well, have a rant.
The conclusion, basically, and if you want examples in this episode, I can give it, right? Well, a bit of backdrop, Okay, I've got a BA in English Literature and Creative Writing, and I'm doing my Master's in Creative Writing, so
very high IQ.
I really care about the structure and the thought process and whatever that goes into writing. I am of the opinion that Chris Chibnall is possibly the worst writer the show's ever had, and I base that on not just the actual quality of his content, but the output. Because he's written for so long and so much, you can discount one-offs from like the 80s or wherever. I think he's legitimately the weakest writer the show's had ever, especially in such a position. Because just take this episode, for example, hold on, I'll pull something out. I'll look at my document. Give me a second. Talk about something else.
Sure.
Connor, before he does that, do your worst of Doctor Who thing and defend this episode against Hellbent.
Oh, fuck.
I'll tell you this.
Brian.
Yeah, what's up, Connor?
I do not like Hellbent at all, right? I'll say this, though. At least the two people in that script were characters. The two main people in that script, they had a character.
Hellbent was after Heaven Sent, whereas this episode was after Survivors of Flux.
Let me put it this way. They were characters before Hellbent. They were characters before Hellbent. They were out of character in Hellbent.
They are characters in Hellbent. They're not good characters, but they at least they have some form of agency. They have some form of
but Tharries, they fucked up something really good, and that's the sin.
Yeah, but at least there was something in it.
Right, okay, I've got it.
Actually, yeah, I'll agree with Connor.
Hellbent was more coherent, even if only by a little bit, than this episode.
Well, it has a bit of pacing.
This episode is nonsense. Can you imagine trying to explain what happens?
I'll agree, it has a bit of pacing.
Connor, I will say, I agree with you. Fucking up something nice is a worse crime than fucking up something that's already shit.
Right, I have my example
I'm
of
not
why
saying
Chris
that makes
Chibnall
Vanquishers good. It's not.
of why Chris Chibnall is a horrendous writer. Okay, so we're talking about Azure and Swarm, the conversation with the Doctor about we like to destroy life, you are scared when it dies, whatever. And there's no nuance in that discussion. But I think the issue is fundamentally it's not motivation, right? It's not. You always saying, well, why do Azure and Swarm want to do this? Well, they were from before the before times, and they wanted to go back to how it was because they don't like how the Time Lords have structured the universe or whatever. All right, fine, that's what they want to do. But why do they want to do it? When we're talking about the Cybermen, okay, we understand the motivation. We understand the twisted logic, right? We understand that from their perspective, what they're doing is basically a mercy. Okay, they think the way people live and age and die is bad, and they'd rather that not happen, so they want to convert you or whatever. That's their logic. We understand why the Daleks behave, how they behave, because they're sort of they're obviously just stereotypical Nazis, and they are prone to infighting, and they can't like conceptualize inferior life living at the same place as them, so they have to destroy it. It's just like an urge, an impulse. We get why they do what they do. Why do Azure and Swarm do it? Like, what is their like? Why? What is the logic? There isn't any. Beyond, we think it's good. So
I'll
we're
do
gonna
you
do
one
it.
better. I'll
That's
do
not
you one better.
Motivation. That's just poor writing. It's not good. It doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't interest us as viewers. It doesn't captivate us.
I would agree that Chib was the.
I'll do you one better. I don't understand Tecteun's fucking motives. I really don't. Tecteun's fucking motives and Flux are more of a mystery to me than Azure and Swarms.
True.
As survivors of the Flux established, Tecteun thinks the concept of morality is bad.
What does that even mean?
Tecteun is just the ultimate consequentialist. Actually, no, that's not true, because consequentialism is actually a moral philosophy. So no, sorry, ignore that.
Well, it's like he's writing, thinking, well, she's a villain, and she's like, you had morality, and that's bad. It's like villains have morality. It's just in opposition to your morality. That's what makes them villains. That's how villain works.
I'll give you an example of something that is a way, way better version of doing this sort of thing. Is like you look at a character like Tywin Lannister from Game of Thrones, where he says he believes that the gods exist, but he just doesn't like them. You know, he just doesn't like that they are in control of him, right? If Tecteun had a situation where like she acknowledged that morality exists, but the fact that the way that morality is in the universe is something that she's against and she doesn't like it, would be way better than just being like morality is bad.
Well, I think there's even like a 1-to-1 comparison. Fucking Thanos from the MCU. You understand completely why he's doing what he's doing. Yeah. You don't agree with it, but you understand his motivation. Yeah. And therefore, he's compelling to watch. He's very interesting to watch.
He sees the population of the universe as a mathematical equation as opposed to compassion.
And he has personal experience that relates to the issues of overpopulation or whatever, so he thinks he's doing the right thing.
The end result of wiping out half of the population of the universe will mean more resources for people that are alive, but it doesn't take into account that you have to murder like trillions and trillions of lives.
Basically, Thanos is the ultimate utilitarian. If we were talking about consequentialism, then Thanos is like, well, this is the greatest good for the greatest number, so we're doing it.
The closest Chibnall could get to that in this series was just having fucking Swarm do the snap at the end of episode 2.
Remember, villains don't have morality. That's how villains work. It's not that their morality is different to yours, and that conflict between the different moralities is what makes them villains. No. It's that they don't have morality, because that's how real people behave. They don't have morality.
Ergo, we should genocide the villains as long as we don't shoot them with a gun.
All right. Well, we could do the genocide talk now if we want. I feel like
it's like it's established in Series 11 the reason why Jodie Whittaker's doctor doesn't want people to use a gun is because bombs are better.
I think she prefers starvation, personally. I think that's her preferred method.
Oh, yeah, starvation too, yeah.
Just any kind of torture.
Should we talk about the genocide?
Well,
the action.
Well, can we just delay that one moment, because I want to quickly touch on Bell and Vinder, because these pricks in the chat have been harassing me about it literally since the start of the live stream, so can we quickly just...
Yeah, let's talk. What do we want to say?
I mean, what is there to say? It was... pointless.
Cringe.
It was a failure. It was a failure. They're trying to make Bell the emotional linchpin, and it doesn't work.
I will say one thing. I'm glad they didn't do the Vinder is the doctor's dad
thank
thing.
God.
Like, thank God. Well, thank God for that.
I had a thought about how it could have worked, and I think what they should have done, if they cut all the unnecessary shit out, which, again, I think is about an hour's worth, is they could have had little character vignettes sprinkled throughout the series, showing people living before the Flux, during, and after, and like tell little stories to try and show the impact of this event and how it's affected people. But the trouble with what they do is that everyone's like, it's happened, but we didn't see it happen, and we didn't see their lives before, so they're all just sort of wandering around the apocalypse, and because they're all aliens living alien lives, we really have no sort of conception of how was life beforehand,
and they still never really established they were aliens. I didn't even know they were aliens. I thought they were just future humans.
I think you can do the whole I think you can do the whole, they're wandering around the universe seeing the impact of the flux and not have them necessarily be humans. It's just Chibnall doesn't do it right because he's shit at writing.
I'm not saying they should be humans. I'm just saying that, like for example, in The Walking Dead, we don't need like an episode beforehand showing the world before it ends. It's like we know because it's based in our reality, so we can sort of understand what the characters are going through. But with the aliens in the flux, they should show us it and then reflect on it. And instead, we just sort of have Belle going from sort of town to town, fucking shit up or whatever. And it's just not. It doesn't work as an emotional linchpin. That's what it's trying to be. And
there's also the issue with the COVID restrictions, because I think COVID has a bigger impact on that narrative than you think. Like, I feel like a lot of the space in this story is empty, like very empty. Like Vinder and Belle are the only people. Vinder and Belle are the only people in the universe, and they're not really seeing the effects of it because
we see I can't remember which episode. I think it might be episode 4 where we see like all those people being teleported by Swarm and Azure, but we don't really get any sense of the world building. It's just people exist.
Yeah. Why not have Belle like sort of engage with those characters before they go? They sort of engage her with the In-Betweeners guy, but like he doesn't really like. It's all just there's nothing shown. It's all exposition, and it's just not like it doesn't connect with us.
Yeah.
Belle.
You know what's funny? You know what I find really funny though? The most coherent and like it's not even good. It's just cringe. But like the most coherent twist in this whole series is finding out that fucking Tamagotchi thing she was holding was just her talking to her baby inside of pregnant belly.
That was like obvious though from like day one to me. Like,
I didn't realize.
I didn't realize it.
I got that pretty quick.
I had no idea.
No, I got that pretty quick.
Are we just emotionally stunted, Connor?
You have to have a very high intelligence.
As soon as they
Sorry, I'm not.
I have the highest IQ in this panel.
My IQ is not high enough to understand when people are pregnant. Clearly,
no, because like the thing that clued me off to it was when in Once Upon a Time, I think it is, they like get the little doodad to read the heartbeat of something. It's like, why would she want to like read her own heartbeat? I was like, it clocked on.
That's a good point, Maddox. Chibnall strikes me as the kind of writer who, at best, would be writing for more forgettable and formulaic end of Doctor Who comics, but he found a magic lamp and wished himself to be showrunner. There's a reason I don't read Doctor Who comics, Maddox.
We talk about the resolution to the Belle and Vinder thing because it's like, oh, it's this. They've been in it for episodes. They're trying to find each other across the destroyed universe, whatever. Which again could be compelling if written properly. I have no issue with the concept. And they meet in the TARDIS, and they hug, and they don't get given anything. They don't get given a scene.
She's just like, I'm pregnant, and he's like, oh,
okay. And then I think that's like probably like basically the last we see of them, really, to have their own sort of lines and stuff when it's not solving the plot. Like there's no room to breathe. There's not like the characters get moments, but like it's literally moments.
There's nothing about their relationship that's any different from any other relationship. It's just so generic. It's just they love each other and she's pregnant.
Yeah, we're told by the audience they love each other. Great, but we haven't seen that. We haven't seen them, not even together. You could have. Do you know when you could have shown Belle and Vinder together when they're doing the flashbacks with Vinder with the Grand and Serpent?
True.
You could have shown them together, and they don't. And it's like, well, why not? You could have given us some perspective on the relationship.
Not only shown them together, you could have shown them with what the society was normally like before the Flux, and then all of a sudden, lots of the big problems with the subplot. All of a sudden, all the big problems with the subplot just disappear just by that one fairly basic fix.
There's more dimension to bloody Martha and that random prick in 42 than these two.
I swear to God, we could, like, not necessarily a script, but we could brainstorm better.
Events
here that would have worked better.
Like, Jacob Anderson is an excellent actor, like, really charismatic, really, really good, like, with facial expressions.
Like in Game of Thrones, he's great.
Incredible.
Let's rewrite Flux so it's.
He's been in 2 like romances that have had weird endings now.
I think that's the solution to this. We rewrite Flux so it's better.
Well,
maybe they gave Jacob Anderson a happy ending romance because in the other show he didn't get a happy ending.
Chris Chibnall's way of writing is to tell us that something is important and we should care. Therefore, we should care instead of making us care by giving us stakes. Like going,
You know-
it's sad that the Lupari have all died.
I do-
Is
I
it
do
because we
think
haven't
it's quite,
seen any except one guy?
I think that's a good
think it's
segue into the genocide point you wanted to talk about, Rory.
Oh, fuck me. Like, I've seen people try and dance around it, because, like, obviously the big comparison is, well, in the episode 2, she chastises that guy for killing a few spaceships as they're retreating. It's like, well, they're retreating in that. I'm like, first of all, the Daleks and Cybermen are literally retreating here. Like, that is what is happening. They are fleeing from their destruction. They're retreating. But secondly, right, the Sontarans in that episode also said they were going to be back. So it's not like he was, like, doing a war crime or something. She, on the other hand, did a genocide, which I'd argue was much worse than blowing up like 5, 6 ships.
Even worse by in the same episode she had that scene with Azor where she was talking about how much she cares about life.
And do you know what makes it worse? What's he called? Comedic Sontaran Strax is, as has been established, Sontarans can have different identities and personalities, which makes them like if you want to go into
right.
yeah, but if you want to go into like the minutiae of it and be like, well, Daleks are all basically the same and Cybermen are all basically the same.
Like,
Sontarans aren't basically the same, as we've established.
Remember when they established like stuff like how the Slovene family was different from other Raxacoricophalabatorians, like how there's a whole conflict around how it doesn't really matter where you come from. It's like there's good and bad from every society, unless you're genetically engineered for evil like the Daleks are, or like you're cold and emotionless like the Cybermen. There's always going to be a variance based on the fact that that's just how life works, and that's the kind of thing that's the kind of dimension that makes a show like Doctor Who really interesting. Whereas with what Chibnall did, he basically just generalizes Sontarans as all being the same fucking thing.
I think it's like the big problem is it's not really that even the Doctor does a triple genocide, which is a mad sentence, but okay. It's not even that the Doctor does a triple genocide. It's that like there's no meditation on it. There's no discussion about it. There's no like this is the only choice, so I've got to make it. Which would add space, add drama.
The fact that the Doctor is more like
she just does it. It's just another character. Actually.
She's more heartbroken about the fact that she didn't tell Yaz her secrets than committing genocide.
Her secret, which was basically, I was hunting for information about the division, and I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Oops, I might have killed like millions of people today.
Timing of that is so
wonky. Oh my god, and then you've got obviously the Lupari genocide in this as well. It's just like you're really treating such a heavy subject so flippantly. It's disgusting, to be honest, especially for like somebody that was trying to preach us morals last week.
It's like, and there's whenever they show other examples of the Doctor and sort of genocide and murder in parts of the show, they'll often, the way it's framed is very different. So like you look at something like Genesis of the Daleks, where the Fourth Doctor is literally anxious to the point of almost having a breakdown because he can't bring himself to kill the Daleks, even though he hates everything they represent. He says that, do I have the right to actually not have them exist? And then it's stuff like
is the choice itself.
When you look at stuff like like when the 10th Doctor kills all those baby spiders in the Runaway Bride, like it's
treated seriously. It's treated
seriously.
I point you to Terror of the Vervoids as well.
It's like the way it's played is like what he's doing is doing because he's lashing out, and Donna turns to him and says, "You can stop now." Because what he's doing, he should stop that. It's unnecessary. Or like when he forces the family of blood to live forever, like the way it's played is like he's acting out revenge, and it's quite a fucked up thing to do. Whereas when the 13th Doctor does a lot of this shit, like starving spiders or wanting Tim Shaw to like be in agony for the rest of existence, or genociding a race, it's just played so straight.
The thing is, though, right? Is there's easy ways to write around like the Lupari genocide, right? Chibnall, you've already established that the fleet can be remotely controlled. So why don't you just have all the Lupari still be alive on their ships, but the Sontarans have taken over the remote control and they're just using it without their sort of input? Or even more differently, why don't at the beginning of the series have Carvanista be the only one left and he's remote controlling the fleet on his own and they've all already died, and then have that be his character arc
Or-
of the series, coming to
or
terms
have,
with him being a lord. Look, that's
you know
more
what-
interesting, isn't it?
You know what we were saying before about how if Carvanista, rather than being having a chip in his brain that explodes, like having not
He
want
just
to tell
didn't
the
want to
doctor
talk.
about
Yeah, he
it.
just didn't want to talk.
Didn't
Yeah.
want to. Imagine if that was in the first episode in the Halloween Apocalypse, and that was part
That was
of
his
the
arc.
drama.
Yeah, coming to terms.
You
with
know
having
what,
the
guys?
Doctor.
I've changed my mind. I like the Vanquishers.
I'm gonna.
Why?
Where are you? Where are you? Give me your address. I'm coming. I'm coming over.
Let me explain why. Out of the 4 genocides that happen in this episode, one of those genocides happens to be of the furries.
Yeah, that is true. Praise Chibbers. He's got us there.
Praise Chibnall, my lord.
It's just it's like what we said earlier. It's that he comes up with really dramatic ways to get from point A to point B in the plot, when either he could have wrote something that was a bit less low stakes, so you didn't have to sort of talk about it. You didn't have if you had just made Yaz, Dan, and Jericho be stuck in 1901 for 6 weeks. We don't need to see how it impacts their characters really, because it's 6 weeks. Whereas he's made it 3 years, so we're gonna have to expect some consequence of that, or the Lupara genocide.
What about Yaz's family? What do they think about this whole situation? I want to know what they
Well,
think.
they've got
They
to
don't-
come to terms with
they're
the fact
not
that
people.
their daughter's 3 years
All
old.
I know about their
The-
family from this fucking series is in Once Upon a Time, her sister wants a guy to say who's the sexy girl with the nimble fingers. That's her
Oh
character.
god, I don't know where it was said, but this is what I mean. Chibnall's characters are basically, they just get switched off at the points they're not on screen. They don't react to anything, really. They just
It's the iceberg effect. Like how a show with good characters and good world building has the iceberg under the water, way under the water, and there's the stuff that you see is on the surface above the ocean, but you can
more
imagine
underneath,
there's
yeah.
a whole iceberg under the water. Whereas with Chibnall, it's this fucking island just floating around. There's nothing under the water.
Can I ask you all a question, right? Do we legitimately think the fact that Dan and Yaz
Daz?
are 3 years older, do we genuinely think the fact that Dan and Yaz are 3 years older, or the fact that Jericho has died, who would have been their closest companion for those 3 years, do we genuinely think that's ever going to come up again?
No.
Nope.
No.
It will
No.
not.
No. it doesn't
Also,
matter.
consider
Doesn't
this.
matter.
Dan should be closer to Jericho than the Doctor. He's spent
Yes,
by
exactly.
far
And yet-
longer. He's only spent
Yeah.
a few
And
days
also-
max with the
like-
Doctor.
Think about some of the emotional tension of the last episode, Survivors. So something like Dan saying, "Oh, don't worry, she'll be back to save you." If that was actually a task, then that kind of line would have a lot of weight, because it means that Dan is holding out hope that something will come that's unlikely. A lot of other characters would do in a well-written story. But in this story, Dan saying to Yaz, "Oh no, she'll be back," is just confirmed right, because it just happens.
Well,
Here's my thing, right? In terms of as well, I want to talk briefly about how the characters change through that journey and stuff. The only times we see Yaz and Dan ever interact is when they're insulting where they both live, and I get it. It's meant to be banter between friends, but we as an audience have not seen them develop that much of a connection to the point where that would feel natural. So it just comes across really forced.
Just imagine imagine how much they would have had to develop as people over those 3 years, and they just feel like the same fucking people.
it's
yeah, they're not written as real people. That's why they're not.
When
They're not real
when they
people.
have banter with each other, it doesn't feel natural. It feels like a script. And they're all right, scouts. It's that's not. I'm not convinced this is two people who know
Well,
each other talking.
Let's compare this to The Girl Who Waited, where Amy is left, admittedly for a much longer time, in that place. I mean, obviously it's not a direct comparison, but it just shows how well and how dramatic it can be to show how much people can change, especially in a time travel story. And they did go through a lot. They were in a time that they weren't used to. They must have faced lots of challenges in that. We saw a few of them, doing grisly things like throwing dead bodies over a boat, and nothing seems to have changed them at all.
Here's a more
Challenge
an
for
even
Yaz.
closer. What about Martha? Last of the Time Lords. Martha is so fucking harrowed and so damaged by what she had to do in that. Is it a year? I think it's
A year.
Yeah. In the one year that she has to sort of traverse the apocalypse, that at the end of it, she's like, "I'm done. I'm out. I can't do it. I can't do it anymore." And you're like,
And
"Oh,
also,
wait,
from that experience, learns
makes
that she sees that she meets and sees all the people that she realizes need help.
Can
and
I
she feels
also
like
make the point as well that they make a very big point in episodes like Rosa and Series 11 that being in these time periods, if you are of a certain ethnicity or gender, is dangerous, right?
Mhm.
The only time we ever see Yaz, like, being, I guess, what do you call it, marginalized against or whatever, is when the guy goes, don't want a pretty girl like you down there getting hurt, and that's it. I'm sorry, but like, if someone like her in 1901 should be having a horrible fucking time.
Do we think?
It's 1901.
Do we
Like-
think if all of us, we're real, we're real people, right? Aren't there? All five of us?
No,
I'm pretty
no,
sure we're all
we're
real.
fake.
Okay.
I'm
Do you think if
digitized.
you went back to 1901 and lived there for 3 years and came back, do you think you would have maybe trouble adjusting because you've already adjusted
I
to
would be
1901? Do you really
fucking
think you'd
dead.
behave
Yeah.
differently?
That'd be
I would be
paranoid.
But the thing is, again, this is the problem: is he makes
Yeah,
really
and not just-
difficult
and
answers
also,
to
like-
simple solutions, and
Yeah.
he doesn't explore it because he doesn't
I
care.
love how
You know,
like,
I'm
Yaz
fucking
is, like,
me
hyper-competent.
being a real, like, you know, I'm gonna admit it, like real, like, kind of straight white dude, privileged, and had ancestors that were colonizers. Like, I would suffer then. Think about someone like Yaz, who admittedly is very qualified as like a policewoman, but at the same time going through all these different European countries as a non-white woman. Like, imagine how much.
Well, they must have went through British
how much they
India,
go through.
British-controlled India to get to Nepal.
Yeah, man.
You also
Like-
notice how like their teeth are all perfectly white still, like just
Mhm.
making the point as well. Like, I know that obviously, I mean maybe that is a bit unfair, but it's like it's just there's no sense of consequence
Yeah, like,
to any
about,
of it.
like-
Yeah.
It's-
About how hard life was for Arthur in Human Nature when she had to be John Smith's, like, you know, what do you call it, like his maid
She
or
was
whatever.
basically made.
That's-
Yeah, she had to experience like the class
And, like,
system as it was
learn,
back
we
then.
learn
It
at the
was
start of
even
the
harsher
story
then.
that they've been there for weeks, and because they've been there for weeks, we not only get like how she's started to get really pent up at all of the stuff she's had to do, but also like the development of Joan Redfern and him, you know, like beginning a romance with John Smith. Like, that is believable because we understand the weight of the time they've spent there. Whereas with something like this, she spends 3 years in fucking 1901 or whatever it is, and
Yeah.
she's fine.
Also, did anyone ever notice that like she's like hyper competent at everything? Like literally everything. Like in Survivors of the I know we get sort of going into the previous episode, ironically enough.
I think it's all relevant. It's all
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
relevant. It is one big story. But like, it's just the fact that she can perfectly use the rope pulley system in the pyramid. She can perfectly like accurately decide like what pot they need to get to tell the fortune teller or what the date is that the universe is going to end. Like, she's perfect at everything. And
Well,
it's-
excuse you.
She's got Clara syndrome.
I
where she's
challenge
good at
this. I
everything.
challenge this. She doesn't know how to put out a stick of dynamite. She just thinks you can just pat it.
Oh,
She,
but-
she
yeah,
doesn't intend to
that's-
blow it out or
That's
anything.
not like seen as a flaw. And in the Vanquishers as well, Dan does that thing that Graham did in the Timeless Children. Was like, you were amazing, you were really good.
Yeah,
Like,
because that's what Chris Chibnall wants us to think. He isn't going to show us them doing that, so he's just going to say it.
But
Yeah,
she's
you're
got
right.
she has got Clara syndrome where she just isn't.
no,
I think Di. I think
Uh,
Di has Clara syndrome.
I
Di
wouldn't
is
say-
more responsible.
I wouldn't say it's Clara syndrome because Clara syndrome implies Yaz is kind of a fucking bitch, but
Honestly, I would say she is in some ways. Not maybe not.
I would argue Di is the main.
She's certainly a
Di
psychopath.
is
Well,
the
can
main
you
culprit.
can you tell us why, Connor? Because otherwise we're going to get people like screaming in the comments or whatever.
Yeah,
Okay,
I,
so what you said about what you said about Yaz like dumping fucking dead bodies over the side of a boat, like that's pretty psychopathic.
but
And,
it's
like,
She is
you
a
know,
police officer though.
stuff like in Revolution of the Daleks, then the Doctor comes back and she like pushes her, and it's like I
Yeah,
get
well, it's like-
and it's like this may be believable if you actually had developed the fact that Yaz cares that much about it, but we never see it.
Do you remember
before that
when like
episode.
dead bodies had weight in Doctor Who? When it was like,
Yeah.
like in Resurrection of the Daleks, where it's like it's pretty horrendous, and the bodies add to the like.
Well,
this
well, think
man
about
kills
Power of the
himself on
Daleks.
this steamer.
Well,
Yeah,
think
this-
about
this
Power of the
man kills
Daleks, where there's literally
yeah.
a tracking shot of everybody who's
What
killed.
about in,
like,
Again, to quote another 6-hour story. What about Daleks' Master Plan at the end, where the first Doctor looks at Sarah Kingdom's fucking rotting dead corpse and says, "What a terrible waste."
But again, it's like this guy like who tries to kill them with a teapot or whatever, which is. I know we're talking
Yeah.
about basically the
How
episode
about
now.
like
But, like they
when-
just kill they treat the dead body like it's a real people, like Yaz Dan. Dan is a plasterer from Liverpool, apparently, and this is, I would assume, one of the first times he's ever seen somebody die, unless Evil Dan is real, and he doesn't react. He's just like, whatever, throw him overboard.
What about-
I've realised this. I've realised this, right? It's occurred to me what this is. Like, the central characters of this show treat everything else around them as props. Like, so
Yeah, it's like they know it's not real.
They don't. Yeah, it's like it is like that Truman Show thing I mentioned earlier. None of them think they're actually in like real life. They think they're all in a TV show.
They don't.
So
None
when
of
they
them give
kill
a shit.
people,
All right, okay, so this has been going on for longer than I expected, so I think I'm gonna get us to wrap it up now. So, do you want to
I've got
start?
4 more hours of work, Dylan. We've got to keep going.
No, we're not. We're not. Like, look, Jay gets to keep the mantle of the 5-hour video. I'm not challenging that. Okay. Brian, do you want to give your final thoughts first?
So I'm gonna do final thoughts on the Vanquishers, then Flux as a whole.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
final thoughts on the Vanquishers. I think it is a very, very messy episode of Doctor Who. I don't think there was any point to it, and I think it is a huge betrayal of the Doctor's character with her just being okay with genocide. It's akin to but much worse than the solution she comes to in Arachnids of the UK. Thoughts on Flux as a whole? While I enjoyed Flux as a whole, there's very little substance to it, and again, we don't really get anywhere by watching it, and it's just junk food, as I stated to Connor, and as he restated at the beginning. It looks nice, but there's very little substance to it, and it is not good television.
Right, Connor.
Yeah, The Vanquishers is probably one of my least favorite episodes of Doctor Who ever. Same with Survivors. I honestly, there's apart from some wasted actors that were trying really hard to make it work, and the visual effects team like really pumping their weight in the CGI gym. The story was garbage from start to finish. Everything was fucking awful. The jangling keys thing is garbage. Dialogue was crap. The story makes no sense. The pacing gave me a fucking headache. I hated it. I'd probably give it like a 1 out of 10 for this episode. And then for Flux as a whole, it's a strong contender for my least favorite season of Doctor Who, to be honest. Because even though I thought some of the Maxine stuff in Village was okay, I thought, honestly, the whole thing was just a waste of time. This is like the antithesis of the kind of Doctor Who that I want to watch. Like, it's completely just not like the kind of storytelling that I look for. So,
Nope,
yeah, fuck
still
it.
better than season 24.
I haven't seen all of season 24, to be
Delta
fair,
and the
so
Bannerman
can't
is
comment.
at least fun.
I can't comment yet.
Actually, well,
but
I don't know if
when
I'd say it's
I-
worse than season 24.
When
I'm not
I've
sure.
when I have seen all of Doctor Who, I'll be able to make a decisive decision. But at the moment, Flux is at the bottom for me. I can't stand it.
I don't know, I think it's difficult to compare the two, as they're both bad television for completely different reasons.
I'd
Yeah.
watch Flux over season 24.
Well, again, I'll talk about season 24 once I've actually seen it properly. But nah, Flux's process garbage. Definitely my least favorite of New Who. I'd say that much, which is saying a lot. But yeah, no, fuck it.
All right, Rory.
I'm just gonna sort of roll it together because I think the Vanquishers sort of ties so closely into why the rest of the Flux series was just bad. It was a mess. I think there was one good episode, and I think that was mostly Maxine Alderton's doing. I don't think Chibnall is responsible for anything that was good in that episode. Like 2 out of 10 for this episode, 3 out, and that's just because performances. Everyone was doing their best. Everyone was tried hard. Like I just want to ask people like obviously this is like sort of a rhetorical question, but like, what is the point of the Flux? Like, what is it meant to give the audience? What ideas and themes are we exploring, and what are we meant to feel?
Cancer, that's all
Like,
it is.
the plot, the lore, truffle sniffing is meant to serve as a vehicle for themes, ideas, character beats, whatever, and we didn't get any of that. Like, stuff just happened, and then stuff stopped happening?
No, because the way that Chibnall Who writes itself is just the sole purpose is to keep people watching the show. That's the main reason they write it the way they do. That's why the jangling keys exist, is that they just want to glue the audience down until the end of the era.
Like,
My
just
balls
keep
have been fondled. I've been successfully jangled.
I
God
just think
damn it.
It's bad writing, and I think it's why it feels so far away from even, like, Moffat's Doctor Who, to be honest. Like, yeah, it could be overwrought and up its own arse and melodramatic, but at least you could identify, like, what they were trying to do, what ideas and themes they were trying to explore. There are no themes to this series. There are no greater ideas around character beats. I think there's nothing.
More creative than Chibnall.
I would argue
Not even close.
Chibnall fundamentally couldn't write something like Midnight, okay? Because he doesn't understand what these stories are for and how they're meant to be constructed and how they're laid out. Overall, like, I would place it in, like Doctor Who overall. It's a bit like the last two series. I've seen it. I have no reason to watch it again. I'll forget it. I will happily forget about it as soon as it's done. I want Russell back. I can't believe I'm so desperate. I'm like, just get him in now, please. I just need something competent.
Actually, I will just add one slight, just so it's not a complete downer. I'm as I always am. I'm looking forward to when Sega Nakanola releases the soundtrack on Spotify, because that's how I will rewatch Flux, is listen to the soundtrack, not watch the episodes.
Do you want me to give my final...
go on, Tharries.
Okay, so
You're just gonna say some not my doctor stuff about hate.
Yeah, you
women.
fucking bigot.
No, okay, so the Vanquishers. Okay. On broadcast, I enjoyed it in a very mindless way. I'll say someone perfectly described, I can't remember where I found this, but it's so true. It's chewing gum for the eyes. If you think about it for a second, you realise there is absolutely no substance underneath, and you sit there going, what the fuck was I just eating? That is what the Vanquishers, and by extension to a certain degree, Doctor Who Flux is. It doesn't have anything to say. It would much rather just throw lore stuff at you in order to keep you invested, as people have said before. I'm so sick of these constant arcs that have, like, no payoff, this constant lore, this constant just repeating of the same mistake over and over again. It's almost like Chibnall didn't even, like, look tangentially at the issues people had with the Moffat era and just decided to do them again, but worse. Because at least with Moffat, and I know that I'm in the minority of kind of liking some aspects of Moffat, but say what you will about the guy, at least his Doctor Who, like, you knew it had a heart, you knew it had a point that it was trying to get across. I think that's the question I want to end on. What is the point that Chris Chibnall's Doctor Who wants to get across? What is the message? What is the heart and soul of what this era, what this run of Doctor Who is trying to say, other than here's some old stuff that you didn't know about? It's just so tiresome. And this episode encapsulates everything wrong with the era. Too much going on. Absolutely all over the place. No characterization. A plot that just didn't make any sense. And, like, the more I've thought about it, the more I've disliked it. And I just cannot wait to never have to say the word Flux again. And I just want RTD. Like you guys said, I just...
Mm-hmm. So, Tharries, essentially what you're saying is, to quote Chibnall himself, it could have been better written.
Yeah.
Typical run-of-the-mill Doctor Who.
Moffat is a way more talented writer than this.
Given this, Flux was not run-of-the-mill.
No, that's true.
It was a fucking disaster.
for all the shit that Moffat is given, and some of it I do agree with, at least when he hit, he fucking hit.
That's true.
He wrote what I would argue is some of the best Doctor Who, at least in the modern era, and maybe even of the show. And I know that's a bold statement to make.
There's a lot of stuff, yeah.
There is a lot of stuff, but I genuinely do believe he is that talented. He is a very talented writer.
when Moffat gets it right, he has shown he can be great. It's just all about execution.
Exactly. But like he's very creative.
He's very creative, and he's very good at weaving.
He needs someone to keep him under control.
Yeah, no, but he's an extremely talented writer. He just like can't be left on his own for too long. Is basically what I'm trying to say. But he is. It's more just to do with like being. It's all about execution with Moffat. Whereas with Chris Chibnall, he's just not creative at all. So his stuff. He is infinitely a better writer than what Chibnall has produced. Because this is the thing. Yeah. I want just to wrap up Flux a little bit. You have to consider that by this point we are essentially at like the Doctor's final special before they go into the Doctor's final finale rather before they go into their final like run of episodes. So in terms of where other Doctors were at this point, in terms of Tennant, which is probably the most easy comparison because he also had like 3 specials after Journey's End or 4 or something. This is the Last Stolen Earth Journey's End equivalent. Does this feel in any way near as emotionally satisfying, as coherent, as enjoyable, as well written? It doesn't have character though. Like that's the big difference. No, but like you don't have anything. You don't have anything, and even as well, World Enough in Time Doctor Falls. It's the final 2-part finale before Capaldi's final special. I would say this is nowhere near that either. Like it's so far removed. Like say what you will about Doctor Falls, I would say it's a weaker second part. But World Enough in Time is so far above any of this. It boggles my mind. So the next time I see people
I'll be very surprised if George shared when and made like a noir edit of fucking.
And even I'm gonna say something that's gonna piss some people off in this panel now, mainly Dylan. Even Name of the Doctor had the balls to at least tell you who the impossible girl was. You can't tease for an entire series this whole thing about the Doctor's past. The Doctor really wants to know the past. And then you give people nothing. In the words of Willy Wonka, you lose. Good day, sir. And we are the ones who lost.
I'm not angry with that at all, Tharries.
I'd argue that's true. The fact that we did. I think the fact that we didn't find out about the past actually in the inverse is more like we win because we win by not having to experience whatever bullshit Chibnall would have wrote. We were spared.
It's more of a waste of time in the meta though, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's not just the fact that like they've set something up for an entire series and they do nothing with it. Yeah. Even though I don't like the Timeless Child, you cannot just have something be that teased and do nothing with it. And like, I feel so bad for the people who've been invested in this Timeless Child arc, because there are people out there, and they've just had nothing. And they've just
at least we know who the hybrid is.
Series.
No, do we?
They've been strung along.
It's left up to interpretation, but Moffat has answered that it's meant to be.
But they've been strung along for 2 series, and what have they got to show for it? A watch that's trapped in the TARDIS. That's what they've got. It's nothing.
It would have been like at the end of Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways if Rose never did the Bad Wolf thing and they just went, what was about that Bad Wolf? Dunno. I guess we'll just forget it.
To quote Wolf of Wall Street, the Timeless Child arc, it's a fugazi, it doesn't exist, it is no matter, there's nothing to it. They did this reveal in Series 12 and they've done nothing with it since.
Dylan, what did you think? What are your final
thoughts? Honestly, you've just all of you individually have summed up my thoughts on it. It was just a massive waste of time. Sure, I enjoyed upon broadcast episodes 2, 3, and 4, but I'm never, ever, ever going to rewatch them because what would be the point? I know now that everything in those episodes led to literally nothing. It's literally just one big light show where lots of things appear, but nothing actually happens. In fact, it's quite impressive, really, how a writer can overstuff a 6-hour story to such a large extent, and yet at the same time, do absolutely nothing with it. Pretty much answer none of the questions he brought up. And it's just a complete waste of time. It's dreadful television. And Connor hit the nail on the head so much that the only point of Chibnall Who is to keep you watching. There is nothing else to it. There's nothing he wants to say. He doesn't want to tell, he doesn't even want to just, here's a fun story. In a more kind of innocent, kind of 70s classic kind of like late 70s classic kind of sense, where it's just like, yeah, here's a fun sci-fi story, enjoy. There's not even that. It's just literally baiting you on so you don't stop watching. There is nothing more to it than that, and it is completely shite. This is dreadful television, bottom of the barrel. And sure, some of it may be entertaining, like when you don't know the full context, but once you do, there's just nothing left. It is shit for the birds. I am so done with Chris Chibnall. I am so excited that he's nearly gone. And if you've been following my channel since the beginning, you won't believe to hear me say this. Thank fuck that RTD is returning. Oh my god.
Before we finish, can I just ask everyone one question though? Are we still thinking serialization could be the way to go for the show?
Yes, that is the one positive.
I'm still pro serialization.
I'm pro serialization. I just don't think this was a good example of it.
Here's the thing. Here's my argument. I don't think Flux is a serial.
Neither do I. Yeah, no, it's mostly disparate. It's mostly just it's vaguely linked a lot of the time, especially with episodes 2 and 4. Like
I'll say this,
could be standalone stories.
I sort of predicted this before Flux came out because they were really hyping up the fact that it was a serial. It's a serial. It's all going to connect.
No, you know what is a serial though? You know what are serials though? It's a Sin as a serial. Years and years as a serial. Torchwood of Earth as a serial. And all 3 were written by Russell T Davies, and all 3 are very highly acclaimed.
I'll do a big cum. I'll do a big cum if it turns out he's
right. Daddy Russell. Daddy Russell. Look, I know I've said some very mean things about you, but if you make serialized Doctor Who, it's got some good characters, but also has some good plots, and it equally kind of balances, the plot and the characters, and it's something I'm going to enjoy. Oh, I will not only forgive you, I will join Connor in your worship. I will kiss your toes.
I think the last note of this, I'm sorry, I think the last note we should leave this on is just how dire this episode was, that it has Dylan praying for RTD.
Yeah, because
Dylan is finally down on his knees and asking for Daddy Russell's cock.
So let me give you the full context of this. Back in 2009, 2010, I was very excited for Russell T Davies to leave, as I was kind of really sick of that style of Doctor Who, and it's when I was kind of really discovering classic and thought, I want more like this. I'm kind of sick of this like kind of characters bullshit, and there's like, I'm still, the RTD era still isn't quite my thing in a lot of ways, but man, I should have been careful what I wished for.
Our standards have been so low.
People don't realize like the difference is that it's more of a style that doesn't appeal, as opposed to Chibnall, which is literally just fucking bad TV.
Yeah, I would say that about Moffat and Russell T Davies. If you don't like the eras, I can understand why, but if you do, I understand why. With Chibnall, and people can like what they want or whatever, but I don't know how anybody who thinks critically about their media can sit and watch this and think it's competent. I just don't
understand why people enjoy Chibnall Who as well, but I just think that their standards are very, very bare minimum.
Like what you like, but I don't know.
I'm gonna say this, right? What I noticed when this episode broadcast, I was expecting the discourse around this to be like quite polarizing. Timeless
children.
Yeah, I was expecting something like that, where there's no general consensus, it's completely divided. But even I've seen people on my timeline, the most hardcore Jodie Whittaker, Chris Chibnall era fans, thinking that this was disappointing. And the reason why is because they've been hooked on an idea of this timeless child storyline, which Chris Chibnall has absolutely fuck all interest in resolving. That's the reality. He'll do something with it in the centenary, no doubt, but I highly doubt it's going to feel satisfying for them.
Have you ever noticed, like in interviews, whenever Chibnall asked about the show, he doesn't really say anything. Whereas if you look at interviews with like previous showrunners, they'll give you a full breakdown of why they did things. Like that's why they had Doctor Who Confidential, like Russell T Davies doing like a full on like, this is why I did this thing with this character and this is what it means. And then Moffat's like doing the same thing. Whereas with Chris Chibnall, it's just like says fucking nothing, doesn't want anything to be spoiled, and then he'll say one word about it.
Yeah.
And then like
there's nothing to spoil. There's nothing to spoil.
After, and he's just like, of the last episode, Survivors, and he's just like, oh yes, of course, and I decided that I wanted Unit to be taken out so I could bring them back, and like that's all he has to fucking say about his episode is just like,
alright.
I did
Can I
this.
just say here that someone made a good choice to put in the chat. Just Joe98 said, I need a video on why it's good. I would challenge anyone who complained about JXE's 5-hour Fall of Doctor Who video existence to make a 5-hour video that's just as well constructed on why the Chris Chibnall era is good. And if you could justify it with substantive points, then I will accept, that your criticism of Fall of Doctor Who is valid.
I would accept that I could then understand why people like it.
I mean, I tell you what, I want to do.
Understand.
If you're a Chibnall era fan, really well done for making it 2 hours into this massive hate circle jerk. But if you are a big Chibnall fan and you think that, oh, actually, I think it's quite good television, I would love to have you on and have a civil discussion with you. Because, let's face it, nobody ever has a civil discussion on Twitter, mainly because of the character limit. All you can do is kind of, short, angry, ranting.
So, the void. Yeah.
I'm friendly. I'll have a fucking discussion with anybody. So, yeah. Feel free, DM me, come on, and we'll have a nice talk about it.
All right.
Yeah. On that note,
I've gotta go.
Yeah, on that note, we are going to wrap up. So, thank you, all of you, for coming on.
It's fine, I'm just tired. I'm done now. I'm so done with this.
It was my pleasure.
Yeah, and now I've got to decide whether I'm going to torture myself by doing panel discussions for the final 2 or 3 episodes.
You might as well.
I think you should. Just get it done with.
I was covering the specials on my stuff, but what I've come to realise is I've made it this far. I will be getting to the end.
But that's what I said about this. That's what I said about this series. But I regret it, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, but the thing is, you got to think, right? You suffered through 6 weeks. The next 3, it's half of that, and it's also spread across a year. So you've got a lot more time to mentally prepare yourself for it.
All right.
I gotta go, guys.
Yeah.
Subscribe to Briar Hardo to goodbye.
Don't do that. Go and spam him with hate. I am, lots of people always say, we don't send our audiences to go and, hate bomb other people and harass other people. Do go and harass Brian. Okay, no, don't actually do that. Don't actually do that. That's against TOS. Right, anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you later. Bye. I love Brian, really. Bye.
I love you too, Dylan.